Agendas for study sessions, including concept reviews, can be found by visiting Broomfield's website at broomfield.org. Our agenda this evening includes one development update and two study session items. Seeing there are no concept reviews on the agenda this evening, there will not be any public comment. You can watch the study session live on Channel 8 and through video streaming on broomfield.org/council meetings. I also want to inform the public that for item 2C, council and staff will move into the council conference room to discuss the evaluation process for our reports. The public may join us in the council conference room to listen to this item. This portion of the meeting will also be streamed and recorded. For our hard of hearing residents present, we have wireless headsets available through our AV team in the back of the council chambers. Our first item on the agenda is an update on the Flatiron Crossing and Hi-Fi Village redevelopment project led by Jacob Knudsen, Vice President of Development from Macerich. Mr. Knudsen, did I say it right? Is it Knudsen?
It's Knudsen,
Oh,
but that's okay. I didn't think I had one teacher or anyone that ever got it right in school. So
thank you for being here, Mr. Knudsen.
thank you very much. I'm happy to be here. Jacob Knudsen, Vice President of Development with Macerich, the owner of Flatiron Crossing Mall. And I've been here for going back 5 years, 6 years now, talking about this project. We've made huge progress. If anybody's been at the mall, you're probably mad at me because it's hard to get around right now. A lot of construction going on. I have one aerial photo in the PowerPoint that you can really see what's going on, but we're happy to be here. And again, Jeff, thanks for having me out. I just looked at the weather. It's 107 in Phoenix. So if you all want me to come weekly, I'll tell my boss that I need to come weekly. Happy to do so. You let me know. But happy to be here to talk about the future of Flatiron Crossing. Next slide. I'll be honest, I took this presentation from something somebody else did. So everybody knows this 1.4 million square foot campus, 175 plus shops and restaurants, 5.6 million annual visitors. The mall is an A property in our portfolio. I'll just kill that right off the bat. The mall's doing great. Traffic's up, sales are up. We'll get into that a little bit more. Next slide. So one thing we definitely wanted to hit on, and this goes back to the very early conversations with City Manager Hoffman, Jeff, and the team. And the reason for doing this village redevelopment was really to benefit the mall. It was everything that we were doing outside to make sure that the mall stayed a relevant mall for the foreseeable future. So we wanted to hit on a little bit of what we've been investing in and doing at the mall. And so one, if anybody's been in the mall over the past year, we have been refreshing the interior. Late last year, we painted the entire mall to bright white. And you wouldn't think that seemed like a big deal, but you walk in and you're like, wow, this is crazy. Especially in the food court, there was kind of a sunset painting above all the food court tenants. You walk in, it's bright white. It's crazy how much has changed. We're looking at lighting, furniture. We've started replacing some of the flooring. You see here some of the wood tile that we've replaced around some of the old wood that's been there for 20 years. And so really a big investment by Macerich in the interior of the mall. Next slide. And then the other piece that we pitched to Jeff and the team was what this redevelopment was going to do for the mall. And this is coming to fruition. If you walk around the mall today, we have 9 barricades up. There's 9 new tenants that are under construction right now. Many of those will be opening over the next 30 days. And I'm being completely honest when I say these are tenants that pre-village redevelopment were not interested in coming to the mall. The investment by the landlord, by us, the investment by the city, and all the stakeholders that have been involved is coming to fruition. And these are just a few of those. So Anthropologie, Lego, Sweet Play, Lululemon, just a handful of the tenants. You'll see the barricades are up, and a handful of these will be open in the next 30 days. All of these will be open by the end of the year. And we have a lot of conversations going on and a lot of exciting new tenants that'll be coming in, over the next 12 to 18 months. Next slide. Everyone's probably seen this. So this talks about the evolution of the campus. The top half, it was pre-village redevelopment, really just the mall campus, shopping, and limited dining. And then what Hi-Fi is going to bring with the residential, hotel, entertainment, and additional uses, really just to make this a 24-hour campus. And I will say, I don't know if everybody's heard Hi-Fi yet. In case you haven't, that is the name of the village redevelopment. It stands for Hello Flatiron. And we got some branding and stuff that you'll see here shortly. Next slide. So just to revisit, so this is the Hi-Fi redevelopment. It's a 25-acre parcel that separates the mall and the south end of the mall where the AMC Theater was. At full build out, we're at 700 to 800 residential units, 100,000-ish square feet of retail. We have switched from, many of you may remember that I talked about, an office building being in the plan going back a few years. We are pivoting and we are now looking at doing a hotel in lieu of the office building. Next slide. And then welcome to Hi-Fi. So this is a rendering I'm sure many of you have seen. So this would be if you're standing above the food court in the mall looking directly south, you can see AMC Theaters. So this shows the residential on the right, our key food and beverage tenant on the left, and then that does show the office building on the back left. So that will be replaced with a hotel now in our plan. Next slide. Once again, this is the first phase. So our first phase is actually 347 luxury multifamily units now in a joint venture with Crescent Communities, 75,000 square feet of food and beverage and entertainment, and then the 2 acres of green space. Many of you probably have heard that we did announce our key entertainment anchors, Pindustry. They're down in Greenwood Village. They'll be opening their second location here at Hi-Fi. I was hoping by this point we would have a couple of our restaurant tenants leases signed, and we are not there yet. I will share that we're really excited. One of the restaurant groups we're working with, they'll be doing 2 concepts here. One is that building that you see just on the top side of the office across from the residential. It'll be their second. It's an upscale American grill. It'll be their second concept in the country, first in Colorado. We're very excited about. And then they'll be doing a second concept, a sushi concept that has 1 location in Denver. This will be their second location in Northwest Denver that we're extremely excited about. Next slide. Just a couple of the pretty pictures. So that's, you see Pindustry on the right there. So it is a 2-story building with a rooftop patio. They have actually since decided to enclose the rooftop patio. So it'll be surrounded by glass in the portion that you see covered and be able to be used year round. That's new. Next slide. Another shot of Pindustry. Next slide. Next slide. This is an aerial photo taken of last month. So this would be if you're looking right over the food court, looking directly south at AMC. So you can see all of the dirt work that's been completed. We are 90% completed on all of the infrastructure that's happening. The pad on the right, you see it says Novel Hi-Fi 347 luxury apartments. Crescent Communities will be taking that pad next month, and we'll be starting construction on the residential next month. And then you see on the left, the restaurant on the bottom, that actually will be starting construction, I believe, next week. And then you see the label by Pindustry. That's actually showing the existing, was existing second and Charles building. That's now demolished, and the ground up construction of the new Pindustry building will be starting in the next couple months. Next slide. And then one slide just highlighting a lot of the events and programming we're doing. Everybody's probably familiar with the summer concert series and a lot of the other events we do. And really our marketing team is working heavily on planning for everything that's gonna happen in 2027 when Hi-Fi opens, and really taking all of the events you see on this page to another level. And we're excited to partner with the city of Broomfield on this. Next slide. That's all I have. I'm open to any questions.
Oh, wonderful, Mr. Knudsen. This is exciting. I can only imagine they must have heard about the crazy winds and weather that can whip up around here at a moment's notice.
Yeah, our construction team has been calling us every day about the fencing that falls over, and yeah, yes.
A little teaser.
Yeah.
All right, wonderful. Well, I'll go to my council colleagues to see if they have any questions or remarks. Mayor Pro Tem Shah.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the presentation. Thanks for being here. It's great to hear the update. So I'm curious, with that change from the office building to the hotel, that was a big thing that we heard about in terms of the numbers, in terms of like that day span, in terms of what that was going to look like. Did those numbers stay consistent with that change now to a hotel as opposed to an office building? And what does that do for the economics there of the mall and the area?
Yeah, so the office building was all, going back pre-2020 and, we don't need to belabor that. Coming out of that, it's just building a ground up spec office building is not going to make sense. We do have a package. We partnered with CBRE out of Boulder. And we do have a marketing package. If there was a tenant out there that wanted to do a build to suit deal and was willing to come in, we would think about that. But simultaneous to that, we've started to think about what's the next best use. And our team thinks hotel is the obvious next best use. I can myself tell you how much I spend on hotel rooms here weekly or every other week, and there's certainly demand for it. And so we're talking to multiple developers about a hotel coming in, and that's the next best driver of traffic, extending that 24 hours, and so we believe it'll be a great use for the property.
And is this hotel going to include a conference center and kind of those amenities as well for larger groups to come in?
It could. We're in preliminary conversations. We like the conference use. We prefer to have limited food and beverage because we want them to leave the hotel and go eat at all of our restaurants. But certainly some of the conference amenities would be great to have.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And those Sundance visitors, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome.
That's all I have.
Okay, Councilmember Henkel.
Yep, I was just about to mention Sundance. There's going to be a premium on rooms for that
Yep.
time. I will just say the community is very excited about it. I belong in a mom's group and the moms, I don't know if the moms are more excited about the Lego store or the kids. I know we are. So we really like the diversification of all the different opportunities there for commercial. Is there some sort of timeline as far as priorities go? As far as if you have the hotel first or if you're bringing in Pindustry first? I didn't see or a timeline on that one.
Yeah. So from a schedule standpoint, we're looking at the second quarter of 2027. And that's really based off of the multifamily timeline. So that's when the first units will be delivered for the multifamily building. We do have the ability to deliver some of the restaurants, Pindustry, for example, a little bit earlier. We're in conversations whether they want to open earlier or wait. So the more concrete details of the schedule will come shortly.
Gotcha. And then the people who didn't want to come here, now they do because of the people are going to be here. We see that often where you can't
Yeah.
have commercial without the people and the density. Were they requiring that was built first before they come in?
Not built first, but they've seen the commitment that we already have in place. And so a lot of these are committing. That was the initial conversations. Lululemon's the prime example. They agreed to open a pop-up store, which they'll typically do in a market that they're testing out. And they'll agree to open for 12 months and see how sales play out before they commit to a long-term deal. And they opened the pop-up store, and within 6 months, they agreed to open a permanent store. And both because of sales and everything that they were seeing, but because of what they saw outside already happening, they agreed to just open early. So we see both sides of it. Some that are willing to open now, and there are tenants that are just waiting for 2027.
Probably have half of my teenage daughter's account at Lululemon.
Well, we thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right, Councilmember Leslie.
I just want to thank the company for taking the initiative, given the environment around malls and how that's changed so much. Staying on top of that, not letting this one just kind of go by the by. Keeping this thing moving when so many other developers are just stuck right now. So if you'll just share with your leadership our gratitude that you're making this happen. Thank you.
We'll do. Appreciate that.
All right, Councilmember Wynn.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say also thank you very much for being here, especially visiting us and giving us an update. My only question is, will there be any other further developments inside the mall, any other renovations, or was the painting project the only one?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. I actually forgot that we are also looking at a significant remodel of the food court, really tying into the hi-fi development comes up to the front doors of the food court. And so we are looking at a redevelopment of the interior of the food court to tie that in. So there will be, yes.
Great. And I would be remiss to, bring in some complaints, of course. And you mentioned earlier about the detours, the parking. Some folks have complained to me about that, but I think everyone is excited for the Hi-Fi project overall. I think all of us want to see the progress, and it sounds like the groundbreaking ceremony, not groundbreaking ceremonies, but the first steps are already on the way, and, we appreciate you being here. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to let Manager Hoffman, did you want to weigh in on the development agreement?
wanted to remind council and give our, from a staff perspective, appreciation to Macerich. Macerich was the first development that we were able to, our leadership team, implement a ratio approach from a business development agreement. So rather than banking on the developer saying they were going to deliver, and not only giving the benefit of the doubt, but saying, and it kind of goes back to Councilmember Hinkle's question of typically a developer says, if you don't have rooftops, I can't deliver the commercial. Market driven, market driven, market driven. Which when you have a growing community, you're able to absorb that. When you're close to build out, you cannot absorb that. You have to be able to work with developers that understand you do for us and we'll do for you. And so from a investment perspective, they were only able to develop residential after having developed a certain percentage of square feet for the commercial. That was built into that developer's agreement. And they have been remarkable to work with. They're on time, they're on budget, they're communicative, and they're transparent. And it has helped us really have a blueprint for future developments to be able to say, again, from a community organization perspective, it helps us maintain that ratio between commercial and residential. And that is why Broomfield remains strong and that we're able to continue to invest in what our largest investment is, which is Macerich. So we're grateful as well from a community perspective and also from a learning perspective on development agreements. It really does set the tone for future business development agreements of what we will expect moving forward.
Awesome. Thank you, Manager Hoffman. Councilmember Lim.
I just wanted to ask two questions about what we've talked about previously. We were optimistic you were headed in the right direction with the income aligned housing on site. Is that still headed in the right direction?
It is, yeah. We're still delivering per the agreement. Yep.
That's great. Thank you. And you were using what you termed a new program for construction debris when you just said you took down a building for pin industry. Or that reminded me of that. Is that still in process or?
I don't know 100% what you're referring to. We did sell a lot of the stuff out of the building before we demolished it and took it all down. But I don't know exactly what you're referring to. Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Ward.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't really have any questions. I've talked with Heather and the whole team over at Mace at the mall numerous times, also because they're on the Flatiron Improvement District, and just very excited to have this reinvestment in Broomfield and specifically Ward 2 and kind of help reactivate that whole area and bring in something new that I think the community, especially those that live in the surrounding area, are really going to appreciate, particularly the increased restaurants and just longer operating hours for the mall. So thank you guys so much for doing this and being the great partners that you guys are. Thanks.
Awesome. Any other council member remarks, questions? Well, I just want to echo my colleagues. Thank you for being a wonderful partner and thank you for this great update, Mr. Knudsen.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Right. Our next item this evening is a discussion regarding a potential human rights ordinance and human rights commission for Broomfield. Council has a copy of the agenda memorandum, which I'll ask our staff to begin the discussion.
My partner is making her way down to the podium. Looking sun-kissed after her week at the Jersey Shore.
Aw.
So she's going to
Welcome back,
present
Ms.
in
Rogers.
the New Jersey accent for the first part of the
Yeah.
presentation.
Philadelphia family members, a lot of water versus water. All right. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. Tonight, I'm going to help facilitate a discussion about a local discrimination ordinance, a Broomfield Human Rights Ordinance. Next slide. This discussion was prompted by a request for future action initiated by the mayor in December with a question of should Broomfield pass a local discrimination ordinance similar to other communities such as Boulder, Aspen, City and County of Denver, Fort Collins, Aurora, and Telluride. Right now in Broomfield, if an individual has a complaint of discrimination in housing, employment, or a place of public accommodation, they take it up with that entity, or they file a complaint with the Colorado Civil Rights Division, with the Equal Employment Opportunity Division, the Department of Justice on the federal level, or multiple agencies, especially on the federal level, if it's in housing, or if it's in the if it's in a specific area, a functional area. The federal government's enforcement of this is a little bit broader than the state. The state has the Colorado Civil Rights Division. Next slide. So when we're talking about what a discrimination ordinance would look like, there's certain areas where discrimination would be prohibited, meaning this characteristic would be an area where you could not make a decision based on that characteristic. It is not necessarily a protected status. For example, discrimination based on sex can happen to a man or a woman, right? As long as it is because of your sex that you're getting discriminated against. So we're not talking about protection for only certain individuals. It would be protection for all individuals based on certain characteristics that those individuals might have. Using the Boulder ordinance as an example, the next two slides cover the type of characteristics that are protected from discrimination. I'll give you an easy example of a characteristic where you're like, well, is it okay to discriminate? It is. You can lawfully discriminate against, let's say, since we were just talking about it, Eagles fans from Philadelphia, right? There's no lawful protection to be an Eagles fan, but it is lawful. It is unlawful for you to discriminate against a woman, and then she might also happen to be an Eagles fan. So we're talking about unlawful discrimination. The type of categories are race, creed, color, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, gender characteristics, marital status. And you'll see on this chart, in Boulder's ordinance, they prohibit discrimination in housing, employment, and public accommodation in those categories, as does the state and the federal government. And I should have put on the federal side, like I mentioned, it's the EEOC, but it's also the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice. Next slide. Continuing down the list, it's unlawful to discriminate based on religion, national origin, ancestry, age, pregnancy, parenthood, custody of a minor child, disability, income source, immigration status, and veteran status or military service. And you'll see that not every box is filled out. So in Boulder's ordinance, they don't protect against discrimination based on veteran or military status. Doesn't mean that Boulder doesn't care about that. It's just not an area that they decided to address as far as their local discrimination law. Another example, Colorado is one of the states that does not prohibit discrimination in housing based on age. Other states have put in that in their state code. So it doesn't mean Colorado doesn't care about age discrimination. There's just some policy reasons sometimes where you might not have age discrimination based on housing. There's a lot of federal laws and federal guidance related to age discrimination on housing that protects elder communities, but also protects familial status. So you can't get discriminated against if you have children. It gets a little complicated. So I don't want to knock Boulder or even the state or the feds when one of those boxes isn't filled, because there is a policy discussion here. Next slide. We did attempt to find some stats. There isn't a reliable source to find stats on discrimination complaints arising in Broomfield. So no way that we could figure out without doing maybe a survey of how many people are experiencing discrimination in housing, employment, or places of public accommodation in Broomfield. Statistically, statewide, in the Colorado Civil Rights Division, they saw 1,792 charges filed. Out of those, 770 774 were closed and moved out. 716 of those are no probable cause. And what that means is the commission decided that the complaint, for lack of better words, didn't have merit. The complainant can still go to court and continue with their case, but at the CCRD level, it didn't have merit. 45 cases have probable cause, and this is statewide, and they don't break down their data, unfortunately, by county, which is hard to do anyways, because we have people who live here who might be shopping somewhere else or employed somewhere else. So that's state data. Next slide. Federal data is also hard to find. It comes from multiple sources. So if you're looking at housing, you want to look at HUD data, and as well as the Department of Justice data. You have litigation enforcement mechanisms. You have a lot of agencies that might address various types of discrimination complaints that can come their way. So one of the easiest statistics we were able to pull was in the employment context. So in the employment context, nationwide, there was 88,500 claims filed in fiscal year 24. 1,300 came from Colorado. And you'll see the type of complaints in the employment context. And you might be thinking that chart doesn't make sense because you have way more than 1,300 listed there. Somebody can claim more than one type of discrimination in one charge, like I was discriminated against for my age and my race. So 1,300 in the employment context federally, and overall 1,700 for the Colorado Civil Rights Division, and that covers all three types of discrimination in housing, public accommodation, and employment. Next slide. All right, so we're going to talk about the discussion tonight. The big question is, does council want to do this, and what's the scope? And that's sort of what we were talking about, what type of categories, what type of areas. But I think one of the harder part of this discussion is, how are we going to enforce this? And I know when I've spoken to some of you about this ordinance and this concept is, it's hard to have an ordinance when you don't have an effective enforcement mechanism. And in my research of what other communities are doing this, I am finding that there are some communities that have this on the books, but they've had no complaints or anything filed in years, and no real good enforcement mechanism or outreach on enforcement. So we're going to talk about models for enforcement. And I'm going to go over, I call them 7 models. So first we have sort of an internal office, a city manager, you direct the city manager, a city manager internal office model, third-party model, a board model, charged directly into municipal court, a private right of action, a business license violation. And the idea that I want to have council consider tonight is a human rights board that without an ordinance at this time, and maybe that board is charged with looking at this as one of its first tasks. Next slide. Oh, no, back a slide, sorry. All right, so this first model is an internal model. So the city manager or her designee, or an office that we stand up, handles the complaint start to finish. And they take the complaint in, they get in touch with the complainant. They might reach out to the parties initially and say, can we just all sit down? They might need to do some investigation, and then have the parties sit down. Or there might be so much disagreement between the parties, they just need to investigate and come out with a decision. This is the Boulder model. And they do a lot of outreach and meetings with people, and a lot of their complaints from my discussions with the people who work in that office are usually resolved at the conciliation level, which is, we got this complaint, we investigated it, it's valid, what are you going to do about it? Other side of that complaint, and they work with the parties to come to an agreement. However, that doesn't always succeed, and sometimes a decision might be issued by the office, and the office, at least in Fort Collins, they can file in municipal court for prosecution, or they issue a decision and that decision stands, and if a party disagrees, they can appeal it to either the Human Rights Commission that's in the jurisdiction or the district court. So that's an internal stand-up office model. Next slide. Next type of model is a third-party hearing office or a third-party office model. So Broomfield could engage a contractor who's experienced in this area, and when we receive a complaint, we forward it to that person and they take care of it. sort of like outside counsel, but they take care of it, start to finish, meeting with the parties, investigating, issuing a decision. That would be subject to potential appeal, either internally if we stand up a board, or to municipal or to district court. So that would reduce the amount of staff time internally, but it would also put it to an outside entity that we necessarily don't have a ton of control over. Next slide. Another type of model is you have a Human Rights Commission as your hearing board. So similar to our Personnel Merit Commission, and that's the commission that hears our employment appeals internally. A complaint would come in, staff would manage it, administratively deal with it, and then bring that case to whatever we call it, the Human Rights Commission. They would hold a hearing and issue a decision. This model would be the most, well, probably along with the first model, the most labor intensive as far as staff time and resources needed to not only get the right experts to support this commission as a hearing body, but also make sure that the hearing is run fairly and that we have the right rooms. And with the Personnel Merit Commission, we spend probably about $8,000 to $12,000 on each hearing. And we also hire outside counsel to advise that commission, because my office helps prosecute or helps deal with one side of the argument. All right, next slide. Shorter explanations for the other models. Charge in a municipal court, it's just a violation. We make it a code violation to discriminate, and it's just a type of code violation that goes to muni court. The issue there is who would write those tickets for the individual. You could have a private right of action, which means an individual could actually bring their own case in court based on our law. You could have an impact on business licensing. I saw this in the Fort Collins. I remember reading it in Fort Collins. It's in Aspen too, but where it's a licensing violation, and it would be dealt with as with any other licensing violations. You would still need the investigation and the determination that there was actual discrimination, but then it would be dealt with as an issue with the business license. Then you could have this idea of a Human Rights Commission without a local discrimination ordinance. Lafayette in 2016 stood up their Human Rights Board, and that board, similar to our other boards and commissions, has a charge, and they meet to discuss and evaluate issues of equity, inclusion, diversity in the community. How do we handle discrimination, outreach? It could be charged with, should we pass an ordinance? Is there a need with an ordinance? That could be a charge that council gives this board to look at this more holistically and reach out to our business owners to see if this was something that was needed in our community. Lafayette has these, and in the memo, there's some other examples of human rights boards or similarly named boards that don't have an enforcement component to them. A lot of them, I think one's in a mountain community. I didn't bring the memo. Oh, here's the memo. It was Breckenridge's, has been in place for a long time. They have a social equity committee. Pueblo, Greeley, all have boards without an enforcement component. They do have humans. All right, next slide. So the questions for council to discuss tonight is, do you want to move forward with a local discrimination ordinance? If yes, what would be the scope? Housing, public accommodation, and I apologize that question's not there. What's the scope? Housing, public accommodation, and employment, and what areas? Race, sex, gender, etc. And if yes, what would be that enforcement mechanism? In the first year, these are the estimates for the first years. It's really hard to predict how much this would cost because we don't know how many claims we would get in. I mean, if we go a whole year with only 2 claims, it won't be that expensive. If people decide to utilize this rather than going to the state CCRD or to the federal agency, then we could see a lot more claims. It's just really hard to predict. Boulder's had their office stood up for a while, and they've done outreach. I did get some numbers, and I apologize, they're back on my desk. I can pull those up if you want to know, but I don't know if that's apples to apples. It'd be really hard to predict. So my suggestion, my recommendation in the first year would be that if council wants to move forward with this, we do that third-party hearing model. And we budget $50,000. It could come out of my budget the city and county attorney office's budget. And it's capped at that. And we'll see where that gets us and we bring it back to council. Internally staffing an office, just to start that up, would be $75,000 to $125,000. If we require a dedicated employee just for that office, then it's going to be a lot more than that, somewhere around $300,000. If we're talking about the resources to do this well, money to hire the right SMEs, and also the personnel costs with that individual, IT, space, all that stuff. And then, does council want to establish a board and commission focused on human rights, either with an enforcement component or without? So Mayor, that's the end of my presentation, but of course I'll be here for questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rogers. That was great. I'll go to my colleagues first. You answered a lot of my questions with that. Councilmember Nguyen.
Thank you, Attorney Rogers, for the presentation, and I'm glad we're discussing about this. I think for me, my first question is that, obviously we want data-driven, facts, statistics. With the federal government probably not going to be disclosing those statistics because they're laying off everyone for, in urban development, education. What would happen when we don't get those numbers anymore? Would that be an issue, concern towards potential office?
Thank you for that, that question, Councilmember Nguyen. When I was trying to get the federal data, I was actually inundated with data sources. They have a lot of raw data out there, and you spend a lot of time trying to find the exact data that you need. I mean, I have to do a shout out to the CCRD and the EEOC because it was really easy to find their data. So I do think the data points are still out there, and they have some mandated annual reporting under regulations that have not changed yet. So I think the data is still going to be put out there. It's just finding applicable data for our question.
Yeah.
Like a county level discrimination ordinance.
And for the next question then is the enforcement mechanism. So I guess for the capacity for municipal courts, would that be an issue with municipal courts, or is that more of a just go through the capacity, I guess, aspect of this question?
It would add a caseload to the municipal courts. Again, we can't predict what that number would be in an area that our municipal court does not address, right? Our municipal court is focused on municipal health, safety, welfare, policy, and criminal violations, not discrimination, which for those attorneys and judges that work in this area is a niche type of area. So it would be a whole new area that we would be bringing to municipal court if that's the route that we went.
Okay.
And the city that has it, so in Fort Collins, they have a larger municipal court with multiple judges. I mean, we have one judge with backup judges. And I think highly of Judge Bachman. She is a municipal judge that came from a county and district court background, not necessarily with the background needed in this specific area.
So those are my questions. I appreciate answering. For my questions to answer, for number one, I would prefer the third-party model for the budget from the CAO budget. I think that makes sense because this would be a new process, and that would be the enforcement mechanism. And for question two, I do think we should have a board and commission focused on human rights in our community. So those are my questions. So those are my responses, Mayor. Thank you. And again, thank you, Attorney Rogers.
Thank you. Councilmember Henkel.
Thank you, Mayor. I wrote you an email today because of all of this research. You are a research queen, so thank you.
Oh, can I give a shout out to Denise Keith in my office?
Yeah.
She did a lot of the work too.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you. I also love that about you. You're such a team player. First of all, I thought it was kind of interesting that Aspen and Aurora have this. Like, there aren't a lot of things that Aspen and Aurora have in common. And I thought that was really interesting, how they both have some sort of code based on human rights. And I thought that was really interesting. Second thing is that we have a lot of people wanting this already in the community. And so I'm very thankful that the mayor brought this forward. And I just wanted to know a little bit more. I didn't have a chance. I wanted to actually watch some of the hearings because I've never actually seen a hearing. Do we know what those hearings look like in Fort Collins, if they have, the board or whatnot? And then what does the enforcement look like exactly?
Thank you for the question, Councilmember Hinkle. It really depends on the board and how they're set up. It can be a conference room with 3 people and the parties sit on each side, and it's sort of loose rules of evidence, loose court rules. You go first, you're the complainant, you're the respondent. Do you have any rebuttal? Okay, here's my questions and I'll make a decision. So it can be that informal. Some do it in a room where they have a dais. It looks very court-like. They run strict rules because maybe they've been burned in the past with an appeal that didn't go their way. So it really is all over the.
Okay. And then do we know what the enforcements are? As far as the repercussions or the consequences, what do those look like?
Usually there's monetary settlements in this. That happens when there could be an agreement between the parties. There could be fines imposed, and then you would mandate that they cannot discriminate in the future.
Interesting. Okay. I'm looking forward to seeing that kind of fleshed out. I agree that we do need something with an enforcement mechanism. And yes, I want to move forward with the local discrimination ordinance. I like the third party model to begin with, and I would like to revisit it. Either if we find that things are working or not working, I constantly want to improve that system. So I would like to revisit this after a year of the process. And then the second question is, it says, does council want to establish a board and commission focused on human rights? Yes, and I also would like to have public input. So people like John Dulles have come up and forward and saying that they have helped other cities establish a human rights commission. And I feel like it's really important for our community to have some input in that. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Ward.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to piggyback quickly off of a question that Councilmember Nguyen had about going into municipal court. Did you or your office talk with Judge Bachman about what would the implications be if council were to decide to go down this route of charging into municipal court, and how she felt about bringing that on?
Unfortunately, I did not.
Okay.
And I apologize for that.
No worries. I just thought it'd be interesting to get her perspective, and maybe we could get that at another time.
I am very cognizant as she's trying to expand the court's outreach in the criminal context and do more community court, that this would be an added docket that she doesn't currently have.
Okay. In regards to establishing a board or commission focused around human rights, obviously we had the Personal Merit Commission, and while we were going through the charter review process, I recall, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that we had concerns with that particular commission because of scheduling conflicts with different members and their ability to properly adjudicate claims. Am I correct in remembering that?
Yes.
Okay. Is that something that could potentially be an issue here that would really defeat the reason of having that board or commission?
If the board or commission, and I almost want to go in and change the slide a little bit. There's 2 types of board and commissions, just one similar to our other subject matter boards that is looking at this issue globally, for the entire community, and a board that we use as an appellate body or a hearing body. If council wants to use a board as that type of a hearing body, appellate body, we would have the same issues as a Personnel Merit Commission, which are as follows. We have this Personnel Merit Commission and we train them up. And fortunately, we do not have many employment-related appeals that have to go to the Personnel Merit Commission. So you're calling this group only a couple times a year at most. I will tell you, we haven't had one in 2025 that I can recall, and I'm thinking back to 2024. So you have that sort of staleness. You have to get everybody back up to snuff about our policies and procedures. People come to the table with a lot of great experience that are on our Personnel Merit Commission. And then you have the scheduling issue where we hire outside counsel, we have members of the commission, we have the employee and their attorney and my staff. It is sort of a scheduling nightmare. It can be. We would have those same type of issues here. I can tell you that the Aurora model, coming from my experience in Aurora, that board has a standing meeting because they do both. They are the body that sort of looks at these issues, holds events, is involved with the community as a subject matter board, and when needed, they sit as an appellate body. So that helps a little bit. And like our Personnel Merit Commission, Aurora's board didn't have that many cases.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. My next question, and I'm asking this because I think some members of the community are having this question, is what does the benefit of having a local ordinance do compared to, obviously we have CADA in Colorado and then there's federal policies. What is the extra benefit of having a local ordinance versus just relying on the state to do the legwork or the federal government to do the legwork?
You're asking me to make a policy judgment on this idea, because I think there's benefits and I also think there's some cons as well. I think some of the benefits is it's local, right? It's handled locally. We know the businesses here. We know the employers here. When we're dealing with discrimination, we have the relationships to reach out to a business owner and say, we heard that something happened the other day and we want to sit down. We got to complain about it. We want to sit down and talk to you about it. So we have those relationships. Hopefully we can do it quicker, potentially, than could be done at the state level. Now, I think some of the cons is similar to the Border Commission. This is not an area that we operate in right now. So while we have people in our organization right now that deal in the discrimination space, either as lawyers or in our DEAI department, this is not a service we offer yet. So our experience isn't there in dealing with what CCRD already knows about. How do we track the data? How do we handle complaints? What's the best method for communicating people? What do we do when people don't respond? So you have an experience level with the state and resources that we don't have at the local level. And I would say that also exists at the federal level as well.
Okay. Out of curiosity, are people allowed to file violations of human rights in multiple different jurisdictions, so like state and federal, or do they have to pick one or the other?
It depends on the law on the state or federal side. I know that Boulder, and this is probably what I would suggest adopting, Boulder's ordinance says if you have a file in another entity on the same claim, we're not taking your claim.
Okay.
So because I think, again, potentially one of the cons, filing in with your local jurisdiction doesn't stay the time frame that you have to file your state or federal claim, and there's strict time frames on those. So when I was speaking to Boulder's representative, they said, yeah, if we find out that somebody has a claim already filed somewhere else, we say, okay, you're good, stick with that, go forward with that one.
Okay, wonderful. I guess another question I have relates to some of the other models that you listed in terms of the private right of action. Other than the costs that the court itself would incur for hearing the case and the kind of the workload that Judge Bachman would take on with that, are there any other costs, like ongoing costs associated with that type of model? For the
For
city and
good or
county?
bad, there would not be. We would, and if people would call for assistance, we would tell them we have no role in that private right of action.
Okay. I think those really were most of my questions. If I think of more, I'll let you know. But I think right now, oh, I did have one other question. In terms of kind of the budget for this, I know we've been having lots of conversations about the budget and kind of reallocating resources. Is this something that staff thinks we can absorb at this moment, or no?
None of this is budgeted.
So for my my answers to the questions, I do think we should move forward with a local discrimination ordinance. I think it's important that we have backups in case other things change at different levels of government. In terms of enforcement, I'm a little intrigued with the private right of action in that it reduces the costs for the city and county of Brookfield, and then tracking as time goes on how many claims potentially come in to the court. And then based on that data, maybe reevaluating whether or not we should move to a different model where we take on kind of that enforcement mechanism. Obviously, with a private right of action, that could potentially make it more challenging for other people to access justice. We see that with incurring court costs and attorneys' costs and stuff like that. So I do want to be cognizant of that. I do think council should establish a board or commission, probably right now for the time being, just to evaluate within the community. I don't necessarily think establishing them as a hearing body would be appropriate given our probably experience with the Personal Merit Commission. And then in terms of, I know you had the third question that wasn't listed up there, but what all we should focus on. I think probably a replication of boulders would be a good start. Yeah, that's all for right now. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Delgadillo.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you for all this information. So I also kind of zoomed in on the municipal court and private right to action as well. So on that slide, looking at so charging to municipal court or the private right to action, those are two separate bullet points. Are those mutually exclusive or are those related? This is on slide 10, by the way. It's the first two bullet points.
Go back to that slide. Which one? They are different. So a charge in a municipal court would take staff time. We would need somebody to write the ticket and then go there to be the witness for my city attorney to prosecute that violation. The private right of action would be two private parties taking their case to court.
Okay, that's helpful clarification. I know you kind of went over that, but the putting a finer point on that is very helpful to me. So, and then kind of following up on the discussion we're having. So just to be crystal clear, private right of action means that we don't necessarily incur a cost, except it would, of course, come to court, but the person bringing the charge would. Whereas a third party to hear over the case, that the aggrieved individual would not incur a cost then. The cost would be from us contracting things out.
Thank you for that question, Councilmember Delgadillo. The private right of action, the complaining party does have some cost, and it's up to them if they want to hire an attorney or go to court representing themselves pro se. So there are some costs. They need to prepare the complaint. They need to prosecute their case, get their witnesses, get the video, make sure. So there is expense for the individual complainant when you're doing a private right of action. When you have a third party officer that says, okay, here's our form, write down everything that happened, and then I'll run with it. I'll do the investigation. There's probably less expense for the individual when we have either internally or an external staff member handling that complaint and saying, hey, when you have a chance, send me those pictures you took, have your friend send me that video so I can look at it, rather than that person trying to gather and figure out what they need to present on their own.
Okay, that's helpful to know. And that makes a lot of sense. And then do we have a sense of any of obviously there'd be like an RFP or something like that, but do we have a sense of who the players are in that third party officer hearings? The thing that I worry about is, this reminds me a little bit of, whenever you buy a car and you agree to go to arbitration, as opposed to necessarily being able to properly prosecute your case if something goes wrong. And that's typically very much in favor of the car dealership or whatever. So, I mean, this sounds different, but can you kind of speak to that a little bit?
Yes. So the RFP would go out to not only attorneys, but a lot of them are attorneys in this space, previous CCRD employees that have started businesses that focus on this area. A lot of them do investigations for businesses, or they have a component where they help individuals manage through a process. So we would have an RFP that would ask somebody that doesn't really have a practice or a business that is one side or the other, not somebody who only represents employers and never represents employees, to be our hearing officer. So we would look for somebody with a lot of experience in the bigger laws that we're talking about on the state and federal level, that would understand discrimination, understand the evidence that's needed to prove a claim, would be able to create a process and have that ability to not be biased one way or the other. I mean, arguably, CCOB doesn't have a bent either way. If discrimination occurred, we want it to be addressed, but we also don't want individuals to be subject to false discrimination charges. So we want to find somebody who can find that balance. And that's what the RFP would ask for. But there are a lot of people in this space.
Okay, that's very helpful. And I appreciate you clearing that up because it does, the administrative mechanism does kind of like, gotta suss that one out a little
Yeah.
bit. So thank you for that. And then kind of to answer your questions, interestingly enough, I was also kind of intrigued by that private right to action. I do understand kind of that equity thing. I hope that if budget is kind of a concern and a challenge for us, I think we should still move forward and just allow that allow people the right to move forward with a claim, if all else fails, because I know there is a budget component to that, but otherwise I do agree with this third party model. And then does council want to establish a board and commission focused on human rights? Yes, but the hearing, that makes me a little bit, I would have to think that one a lot more through if that board were going to be actually hearing these complaints. And then I agree that the Boulder model makes sense to include. I think you mentioned that veterans are not necessarily included or protected in that one. And if that's the case, throw that as a protected class as well within that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you. So I do have a few questions. The first one is, and I think you've already pretty much answered this, like we don't really know, are we seeing issues in Broomfield that this ordinance would address? And that was, we're not at that point to really know yet. That's what I was hearing, is that?
We have anecdotal information. I mean, occasionally I'll get calls in my office because people think that we're an office that could address that for them, and we forward them on to the state.
Okay, so I would agree with Councilmember Ward on the last part that he added, that if we're going to do anything right now, I would just say the board or commission set something up to even go out there to start to see what areas of focus what gap we need to fill. So I do have a question about the on the 1,300 charge receipts from the state level. Those are when I was looking this up, those are the cases filed, is my understanding. And then 15 to 20% of those actually are found to have merit. Is that what the numbers, what you found?
Are you looking at the federal slide?
The state
slide.
on the 1,300 Colorado charge receipts?
Oh, yeah, that's federal EEOC employment claims. Yeah, those are filed charges.
Okay.
It's an online form that people submit.
And then do you know how many? I saw 15 to 20%. I just Googled it. Is that about right for how many were actually found to have merit? Or do we know, is that not available?
You did exactly what I would do, is if you're finding that information from the federal site online, then it probably is pretty accurate. And you said it was how many?
15 to 20% for Colorado. So of those cases, only a few. So here is like the thought from the other side of this. We have small businesses in Broomfield and landlords that operate a few units. So how much so if, you know, 80 to 85% of these cases aren't actually even found to have merit, is that initial process to get to that point? Is that not much effort, or do they need to go out and hire an attorney and take time to get through that process? Because there's also the other side of this is which is happening either way, whether we do something locally or at the state level, but there is an impact. Do we know what that impact is, or if that would increase if they were in Broomfield, or be less of a burden?
I don't know if it would be less of a burden, but there would be some costs. Similar to the complainant, the respondent would also need to gather their information, talk to their, you know, employees or other people that might have seen the incident or know about it, get all their information together and present their case on the other side of the complaint. Whether or not they decide to have an attorney represent them, that would be up to them. So there will be some cost and effort needed on the employer side. I mean, the hope is potentially on a local level, it wouldn't be as great as a full EOC case, but you know, in my experience in doing these when I was in private practice, it really depends on the type of allegation. If the allegation is simple and you have video or an email, you're done. You don't need a lot. But if you're talking about, you know, I mean, the allegations could be all over the place and require a lot of witnesses, a lot of interviews, then you have a great expense, no matter what agency you're dealing with.
Okay, and then if we did have a process here where we could enforce this, and they went through the local process, would that preclude them from then bringing that same allegation forward at the state level? Or could you come to Broomfield, see how that works out, and if it didn't quite work out, you could then file with the state or federal government?
Potentially, and that gets into a sort of a really complicated legal question. It depends on how the complaint is resolved here. If it's resolved by a settlement or conciliation, we would ask that the parties waive all their other claims. So this is the end for the parties. We're going to try to get you to resolution today. Now, whether a decision at a local level would preclude somebody from filing that same claim at the EEOC level is sort of a complicated legal question that goes to claim preclusion, which came up in a recent discussion that we had with counsel. Potentially, it might preclude them, but it also might not. It depends on the situation. I mean, there is a civil concept of double jeopardy, which people are familiar with, that could apply. And that's why I think Boulder has a policy that, look, you want to file here, that's great, file here. But know that if you want to file elsewhere, we're going to dismiss this complaint so you can deal with the feds or go to the state. Because we don't want you to lose 3 months doing the Boulder filing or Broomfield filing, and then you only have 6 months left to file your state claim.
Okay, and then I was trying to relate this the same way, how you would go through like a regular legal case. If you can appeal things to the state and federal level, but these are completely separate courts, so you can't appeal.
You could appeal. So it would be a final decision by the hearing officer that would be appealable as a Rule 106. So it would be an arbitrary and capricious ruling. So like when our marijuana licensing rulings. So these are all appealable. And also people still could have their certain state and federal claims that they could assert in state and federal court even after they were done here.
Okay, so this, I think, oh yeah, and then I have the same concerns already raised, that this isn't budgeted, that we're putting the, needing to give something else up to find the money to go through this process when there's so many yet to be answered questions. So if I was gonna answer the questions right now, I would say, I don't think we should move forward with the local discrimination ordinance. I would be fine to do some research and you know, set up a border commission to go out and really investigate how all this would work. And so yeah, two would be as much as I would want to do right now. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And Councilmember Leslie.
Thank you, Mayor. Because there's not a lot of data available, I'm inclined to recommend that we do a boarding commission, take a proactive position rather than an enforcement position, because we do have state and federal enforcement opportunities. So my suggestion would be that we establish a board and commission to do the proactive analysis and to work. I liked your response, by the way, when you said earlier that a local policy would be beneficial because we know the local businesses, we know the local people, we know the local landlords and stuff. And I like that attitude. People want to be heard. But also, people want to have their issues resolved in the least complex way as possible. And I think businesses would feel the same way. So I think what I'd recommend would be a board and commission, do the research, see where there may be areas that would require some action, where we could follow up and do that. I would suggest that commission should try to move to resolve issues at the local level, as you were suggesting or implying. And then third, I would suggest that where possible, we move the item to the state or federal level, let the person get their say, get their opportunity there, rather than us duplicating that, replicating that, paying for that. I want to try to avoid cost, because I know from my own experiences that when you provide opportunities, you get so many people will file. And as we know from the data that you do have, most of those are not going to result in any kind of solution for the individual, because they're not meritorious. So I would say, let's take a proactive stance. Let's take a look, see if there are issues. Let's try to resolve those issues at the local level. If individuals have real legitimate complaints that they believe, that personal right to sue whatever they want to do, try to move them to the state level or the federal level, not for us to handle it. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councilmember Lim.
If the board and commission were set up to examine the needs at the local level, what gaps there are, and what gaps we could possibly fill at the local level, I'm assuming that's going to take a certain amount of advice from experts to inform that board. So how much is this, do you see this setting up this board as typical as setting up any other board, as more staff intensive? And what would you normally budget for typical board versus this board, that kind of thing?
Thank you, Councilmember Lim. I do see this similar to standing up another board. And I also agree we would have to provide resources for this board to not only hear from subject matter experts, although my suggestion would be we try to recruit people who already have experience in this space, but also to do that outreach to see where the issues are in the community and what the community needs. So there would be a lot of cost, and it would be staff intensive for the board. As to how much each board and commission costs, it's so hard to predict. I know that when we did the Charter Review Commission, which was staffed by my office, I mean, we had myself and another employee really dedicated to that. So their time, and it is, boards and commissions are, I think, more expensive sometimes than we realize and more time consuming. And this one would be one of those where we would have to provide a lot of resources to help this board get off the ground. Hopefully after a time, and I think Aurora's board is like this, but they've been in existence for a long time. They're self-managed by that point, but the first few years would not be the case. And it would take a lot of staff support.
So I was just, you didn't throw a number out there. You said labor intensive, it takes time. Of course, time is money of staff. I'm trying to weigh, okay, if we actually give a commission to the board and commission to look into the gaps and to look into, what would be a good local discrimination ordinance to meet the local needs, and what would be an enforcement mechanism to meet the local needs, then is that going to cost as much as if we just had the third party model? That's what I'm trying to.
My best guess is that it would, because we would probably be using that type of expert to come in and help guide that process.
And so if we gave the, a goal for, a lesser goal for the board and commission, just that they were meant, I think it was mentioned in the memo that they would just be focused on education of, the community. Then I would think that would be less labor intensive on the part of staff. Is that true?
Yes, I would agree. I mean, it would be, the goal would be to have this board and commission that meets and talks about these issues amongst themselves, and they determine what they want to report back to council in this space. That would be less intensive than if they had a specific charge.
But I think the outreach and engagement perspective, we need to
That
be
would
really,
still be expensive.
yes.
If there was an expectation that they were going out to the community and talking, if you want to gather a group of 10 people who meet and talk about that among themselves. But I have a feeling council would like that outreach component. And the ones that we see from the other communities have that outreach component. And that's Julie Story staff, CMO staff, DDAI staff.
I was intrigued by the private right issue also, option also. But I really am struggling with the equity in that. And because it seems to me like the people who are, you would have to look at statistics, and we don't have those statistics, but it seems plausible to me that the people who are most likely to need to pursue discrimination are more likely not to have the resources that you're talking about for pursuing a private right. That's my reaction without having the statistics to back that up. And
Well, I will say, Councilmember Lim, discrimination claims are brought by individuals, typically against entities,
Mhm.
not always against other individuals. Like
Right.
it's about the manager at a place, not necessarily that you're not going to be filing against your neighbor. They're not a
Yes,
place
yes.
of
No, I
public
mean the
accommodation.
people who want to file
Yeah.
the discrimination. Yes.
Yeah. So there are very few individuals that have the resources to independently handle legal rights of action.
And I'm also, I also understand that this is a big lift for the municipal court. I think I am in favor of 1, a third party, and 2, limited board and commission. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Everybody's gone for their first round. So I'll weigh in. I definitely, obviously, since I brought this forward, believe we should have a human rights ordinance. So yes, on 1, if it's close. And the Lafayette model is exactly what we can do to do this exploratory outreach. It is advisory only, so it doesn't have any decision-making power, but it's a way for us to get that information. Some of the feedback I've received is the next steps would be to listen to individuals who are most at risk of discrimination and learn about their experiences, struggles, and insights. They think it's also important to listen to law enforcement to learn from them based on their experiences. The point being that the human rights ordinance and possible board or commission is not being created for them, but is being created with them. So with that, that's my my 2 cents, and I'll go to second round now. Councilmember Henkel.
Mayor, I won't take too long. I just wanted to clarify a few things, and thank you for all of your input up here as well. I do think it's, oh, did we mess up? Was Devin on that?
Okay, he said he's still thinking.
Oh, yeah, I think this is all new to us. I think it'll be a constant, just sort of exploratory type item. I will say, I'm wondering about the veteran military protections locally, just because of that is so specific for federally funded items. And I'm assuming that locally people don't necessarily implement those local protections just because it is very, very specific federally. So is it like an accessible place where they could complain at the federal level, do you think, if you are a veteran or a military member, or what are your thoughts on that?
You can, there's very specific laws, and veterans are covered by some of the larger over encompassing discrimination laws. And then there's the USERRA, the Universal Service, I'm not going to remember what it stands for, but USERRA provides a lot of protections for service members, especially in the employment context. So that could definitely be the reason Boulder doesn't have vets listed on their grouping.
Okay. Yeah, I guess if we see any gaps there, it seems like housing is covered by the state. And then employment is probably covered more by federal. And then public accommodation, I'm assuming that's also federal. But if we see any gaps, I would like to address that.
State also does housing and public accommodation.
Okay, it just said housing on there, so.
Oh, that's in those, if we go back to that chart, when it has that parenthetical about housing, that means that area. So Colorado's discrimination laws only protect age in the employment context, not in the housing or public accommodation context.
Okay, so not in the housing.
Yeah, but
Okay.
Colorado does have laws protecting discrimination in the housing and public accommodation context.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Ward.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to just do a quick follow-up questions on kind of the private right of action. Because I don't have any experience in dealing with the courts, thankfully, I don't know, is it cheaper, let's say, to file the charge in municipal court compared to state court or versus federal court? Do you know?
Yeah, there's filing fees and they're, as you would expect, state court is less than federal court.
And is local, like municipal court lower than state, or are we somewhat equal with?
Since we don't do private right of action in our municipal court, we would have to set a fee schedule.
Okay. Do you know if there's any other municipal courts across the state that do allow private right of actions?
Yes, Fort Collins does.
Do you know what their,
I don't know their filing
okay.
process. And that would be what we would have to look to establish that process, because we don't have the forms or the processes in place for that type of filing.
okay. And the only reason I ask that is because while, as I said, I do want to recognize that private right of actions do incur costs for individuals. It might be that having that private right of action in municipal court offers expanded access that certainly federal court you're not going to see, and maybe potential state court, depending on fee schedules and whatnot. So that was the only reason I wanted to ask that question. And then in terms of kind of the idea that the mayor was going off of with kind of the Lafayette model, do we know a rough range of what that cost would be in terms of staffing for that commission and assisting them?
That's what we were talking, but it's similar to the conversation with Councilmember Lim. It's hard. It depends on what council would determine the charge would be. There's room reservations, there's all the things we do for all the boards and commissions, plus whatever SMEs they need on top of that.
Okay, thank you.
I want to, Mayor, if I could have a moment, I want to talk a little bit about this idea of a private right of action and the third-party hearing officer model. One of the downsides of a private right of action is court is always open to the public. So while I understand that there's a cost with doing a third-party model, the experience for the individual is a little bit similar, right? They fill out a complaint form, a hearing officer responds back to them, tells them what the next steps are. They file in municipal court, the court clerk calls them back and tells them what the next steps are. Instead of going into municipal court, they're going to go into a conference room with a hearing officer. I just want to say if you're looking at that type of model, one of the pros of having the hearing officer model, although I do think there would be that cost, is that it wouldn't be in a public court. And to Councilmember Leslie's point, a hearing officer model could just say, okay, let's just stop for a second and talk to each other and see what's going on. Courts are much more structured with the rules of evidence. There are municipal rules of evidence. So while there are benefits to the private right of action in that it's entirely external to staff, I do think there are some additional cons that I wanted council to be aware of.
All right, any other last inquiries from my colleagues? Councilmember Anderson.
Okay, so it sounds like there's support, and once you figure out this, for the third-party model, which I still think we are jumping into something that we don't really understand what we're doing, and I'd rather just start the board and commission process, but if I did not realize we're gonna incur a lot of costs in the boards and commission process, then if they're going with the third party model, then I would say, I'm still disagreeing with that, but I would say then don't also do the board and commission, maybe just see what happens and then revisit it, because I don't want to be spending money on both sides trying to like hire a hearing officer and do cases while we're trying to understand it. That doesn't even make sense. So that'd be my final thought on that one.
All right, thank you. Any last comments? Well, I don't know if I mentioned it, but I do support the third-party hearing officer model, if it matters.
It does. I
Thank
mean, it does, but it doesn't. I think we were already there. So generally, and I think we're going to need to have a little bit further discussion. So yes, on the human rights ordinance, and use the Boulder one as a model. Councilmember Delgadillo mentioned veterans and adding veterans. So if other council members want to chime in on other groups, and we can put that chart back up, other characteristics that you'd want to include in ours, but generally we'll use the Boulder model. A third party hearing officer seems to be where the group was leaning. Given the discussion, one of the things we can, when we do go out for RFP for that person, is to say, and we want you to come back in a year and report back to council. What are the numbers? What are you seeing? What were your pain points? What was challenging? What would have been helpful for you? So getting some of that maybe input that we were talking about related to a board and commission. So as far as the human rights ordinance, making sure we're in agreement that we'll use Boulder as a model. And if you go to that slide and then go forward to the next one, Curtis, looking at those two slides, is there anything you would change or do differently? And then
Military.
so that would be the first part of the question. And then once we have that done, I do want to revisit standing up a board and commission, because I think we should talk about that some more. Mayor and Councilmember Hinkle, you both mentioned working with people in the community to create this board and commission.
Well, we're not reinventing the wheel. Lafayette's already been doing it since 2016. So I think we have lots of resources to reach out to folks who have been doing it and get their best practices, get contacts.
So Mayor, I just want to make sure I'm understanding what you mean by that. So to stand up a board and commission, we usually create it by resolution and draft what they're going to do. We can take the Lafayette model and copy it exactly verbatim or utilize other models. But what I heard is there was an ask to create this with the people in the community, create the board with, before we have council pass that ordinance or resolution, have those people provide input in what that board would look like before we bring something back for council to vote on. So that's sort of where I was unclear. Because I could, we could work with staff and we'll create something for you and bring it back utilizing our neighbors' versions and what they've learned, but that doesn't get that community input that you were talking about and that Councilmember Hinkle mentioned.
I was thinking the community input would come from the members of the commission. They're part of the community on it.
Oh, I apologize. I thought you meant you wanted to get input from the community in how we create this commission, what its makeup is, what its charge is. We create the commission and
I don't want to speak for everybody. Now it just feels convoluted. So you guys feel like we need an outreach group first, or should we let the commission members who are community members create a path? Councilmember Leslie.
Yeah, I like the way you're going with this. I think that staff could have some conversation with the Lafayette group, get some input from that. That doesn't mean an in-depth thing, but just some kind of a general thing. And if we go with the commission model, we'd have some foundation for it, but then charge them then to create what they feel is most appropriate. Again, getting experienced people on it. Again, as I said, proactively, let's let a group determine whether and how much of an issue we have here before we go out and invest in a third party or other kinds of strategies. Right now, I don't support the third party concept. I'd rather us find out more about what we're up against, if anything, and then come back and deal with that. So I would support the mayor's proposal in that regard.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thoughts? Sound good? Councilmember Anderson?
So I guess I have a question about, it feels backwards. It feels like we should do a one or the other at this point in time, do the board and commission and start to figure out what it is that what niche we're trying to fill here that isn't being done at the state or federal level. Or we should go hire the third party hearing officer that has some experience and he reports back. So we're gonna do, what I'm hearing is two separate things that we're going to proceed with a third party hearing officer, start hearing cases on, we don't even know what yet. We're gonna let maybe this individual determine how he's gonna handle them. And at the same time, we're gonna form a board and commission that's going to start to figure out what we had wanted. I'm
No,
confused.
Excuse me,
No.
Ms. Rogers, Boulder has both, right?
Boulder does have.
Okay.
So what we're talking about here is an ordinance, so a code provision that would make discrimination unlawful at a local level in certain areas. We have the Boulder model. The ordinance would look just like that. What I heard from council is they don't necessarily want the board involved with that enforcement mechanism at this time. We might change that in the future. So the ordinance would just have the third-party hearing officer would handle it. There would be appeal rights to the district court. That one's pretty much shut. Now this idea of a human rights board or commission that would be impaneled to look at issues in this space, which may include looking at the human rights ordinance and is it effective, is it important, but also look at other issues. What are we doing in the community to help individuals who are marginalized? How can we do more outreach? What does Broomfield need to do to make programs more accessible or equitable? And there's a gamut of things, as the mayor mentioned, the Lafayette model and what their charge is as a board and commission. Similar to ACES, looking at sustainability issues, this would look at equity, diversity, human rights issues.
Okay. So the third-party hearing officer, when does he start hearing cases?
As soon as the ordinance is passed and we receive our first complaint. Well, as soon as the ordinance is passed, we do the RFP and get them engaged. And then as soon as we receive our first complaint.
Board and commission starts to look at other potential pieces that could inform what the hearing officer. No.
Potentially, yeah.
All right, and
The,
then.
the board and commission, though, is stood up by resolution unless we wanted to put it into code, and to do it on the board and commission timeline for recruitment, that would be the first thing we would do. We'd get that resolution before council using the Lafayette model so we can start recruitment.
Okay,
and-
and then we'll see as a future step where, as the budget goes through, how much this we think is gonna cost and where we're gonna pull from.
So right now, the recommendation on the hearing officer for the $50,000, it would be capped at that. I have that in my budget right now for 2026. Here's the concern. I budget on the idea, I try to predict how much I'm going to need outside counsel for. So I'm in essence hoping that we don't have any need for those funds next year. That's what Manager Hoffman said by we don't have this really in our budget. I'm going to be taking away some of my outside counsel budget to pay for this person.
All right, well, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Henkel.
Thank you, Mayor. I think there's a hybrid situation here where we could at least ask the community what they would like to see in a commission, because our commission could look different than what Lafayette does or Aurora does. Maybe Another place has 3 members and there are certain roles. So I do think it would be nice just to do some sort of outreach. It doesn't have to be outrageous, but some sort of outreach. Those who want to be engaged will be engaged on this issue. So we'll hear from people who have already asked us about a Human Rights Commission and what they want to see out of it. There's also people in our community who have gone forward and developed it already in other cities. So I do think it's beneficial, and we use this model anyway in Broomfield. If we stand up, certain commissions. Now, the water board, we had to do right away and in a hurry, so that's a little bit different. But I think it'd be important. Otherwise, we're just building something to just copy something and we're not making it Broomfield own, but we also don't have to make it super big. But I would like to see some sort of input in that. And then just as another note to a hearing officer can be male or female. So when we talk about hearing officers, we'll make sure that it's a he or she or they. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Ward.
Thank you, Mayor. I do want to be really cognizant of kind of the step, our budget. You did say, Attorney Rogers, that in order to pay for a hearing officer, it would come out of your budget that you already have allocated or are kind of budgeting so far. And that would reduce your ability to hire outside counsel for other activities. Do you know off the top of your head how impactful that reduction of outside counsel would be to your office and what we already are doing at Broomfield?
No, because I don't know what's going to happen in 2026. So and this is all public record. So the largest expense that I had for outside counsel recently was our Omni property tax case. So should we get another case like that again, then I ask for sufficient funds to cover what I expect to see in the following year in litigation, plus some. So it's an art, not a science. I think we'll be fine. If not, then I'll be part of a budget amendment in 2026.
Okay. Can you just remind us really quick what you currently have budgeted for outside counsel?
250,000.
Okay. I'm going just to kind of continue with my opinion. I do think it's important to have the ordinance. I am interested to hear Judge Bachman's take on whether or what the impact to her would be in terms of not only budget, but her ability to handle potential increased casework really before we make a final decision. And with that being said, I do want to be cognizant of the budget because we haven't budgeted for this and we have had to pull back on some things that we currently do in order to accommodate some changes that have been made with property tax collection and fluctuating sales and use tax allocation or revenues and whatnot. And if our goal is to provide something that gives people a relief, whether that even be minimal, I think is better than not doing it because we can't afford to do it, which based on what Judge Bachman might say, I think that's why I kind of prefer the private right of action, might allow some extra people to seek relief who can't afford to seek relief in federal court, maybe potentially state court. But it does set the groundwork or the platform for future improvements. And if kind of standing up that border commission right now is going to be a challenge because of the budget, maybe we just do the ordinance and based on what the judge says, maybe a private right of action. And then in a couple years when we can budget further out, have that conversation about what would a border commission do and have them study what have we done so far, what is working, what isn't working, make recommendations to council as to what should change and should the enforcement mechanism change. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Schaaf.
Well, thank you, Mayor. And so I have a lot of questions, but I think I narrowed it down to just a few that are kind of sticking for me. So you had mentioned, Attorney Rogers, you had mentioned your office currently receives phone calls regarding the subject of discrimination and then refers those complainants to the state or federal level. Are those residents successfully able to file a complaint with the state or federal level? Do we know?
We don't know.
Okay.
We refer people, we get calls frequently. That's for the district attorney or another state or federal agency, and we refer them out.
Okay. And do we know if there is a barrier for Brimfield residents to file a complaint with the state or federal government?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
Comparatively to other people in the state, no.
Okay. And then is there a backlog of complaints with the state or federal government that would take, would mean that these complainants would take a long time to get through with their complaint?
There was issue, that's a complicated question and something that I did look into. CCRD is doing well with its caseload right now. There was issue even before this administration with EEOC. And we don't know what's going to happen generally with how EEOC might change how they enforce cases. So it's hard to say if there's a backlog. And I couldn't find any sort of definitive, helpful, reliable data source to say it's these many days between complaint filing and resolution, or a right to sue letter, which is a lot of times what happens. Instead of making a determination, the agency will just say, okay, you know what, we're done with yours. You have the right to sue. And then you file your case in court.
Okay. So I'm trying to figure out what purpose the local government would be serving. And Councilmember Ward asked the question of what benefit does this local ordinance have? And my question would be more, what gap does this fill? And you had listed both of those charts, and it seems like there is at least one gap that exists within the veteran military status that is there. That is a gap that is around that state and federal. So I'm struggling with what gap does the local ordinance fill?
On that veteran military, those three columns are in Boulder's ordinance. Boulder didn't include veteran and military status as a protected status. That status is covered by state law and by federal law.
Okay, so maybe it would be custody of a minor child and parenthood. Is that where the gap exists then?
Well, I think and again, sort of how I responded to Councilmember Ward, this is getting into the policy argument for this type of ordinance. The argument for local ordinances is it's more local control. If there's any changes at the state or federal level, you still have this local layer of laws that could provide relief to people.
That was the whole point.
For sure.
Yeah.
So I guess my last question is what would be the timing of the ordinance for this?
Probably we have to look at council calendar. Workload wise, the ordinance modeled after Boulder is pretty easy to complete. So for me, it would be in a month or two, and then trying to find appropriate council meetings to add it to. And then I would also, depending on the board, get that board resolution to council soon too, so we can have that. It's very challenging when we add a board and they're not in the recruitment schedule. So wanting to have that done so we can get it with the recruitment schedule. So I would hope to do that on the same time frame. The outreach that Councilmember Hinkle was talking about as far as maybe a Broomfield Voice page would extend that time frame a little bit.
All right. Well, thank you.
All right, thank you. So do you have clear direction, Ms. Rogers?
I believe, let me summarize just to make sure. So we'll have a human rights ordinance that we'll add to the code. It'll be a new section of the code based on the Boulder model. The enforcement mechanism in that will be a third-party model. Not necessarily for the code provision, but just if that code is approved, the budget will be capped at 50 and we'll do an RFQ at that dollar amount for people in this space that could handle
And
the
to clarify, if
claims that
there is
come in.
no complaints, then no money will be spent.
There probably would be some money setting up processes, but less than $5,000. Yeah. Yes, you're right. If no complaints, which then could inform the next steps or what, I guess, what the board might do. Then there'll be a resolution establishing if anybody has a name suggestion, please let me know. A human rights board based on the Lafayette model. I will talk to Julie Story and see how we can get a mechanism in place to get some public input. I think Broomfield Voice might be the most direct way to do that. And then outreach through you all directing people to the Broomfield Voice. And then that will have the general charge similar to the Lafayette ordinance. I think I have that hyperlinked if you wanted to see that. Those would be the two steps, Mayor.
Sounds good. All right. Well, that wraps up this discussion. I appreciate all of the work you've done on it so far and our team and the research. And thank you all for the conversation. All right, so we will take a short recess and move into the council conference room to discuss item 2C. Again, the public is welcome to come into the conference room to observe. There's chairs along the back wall, and this item will be streamed and recorded. So we'll take a 10-minute recess to resettle in there. 7:42, we'll reconvene at 7:52-ish. Thank you.
Paperclip. Well, hello, this is our first time streaming from the conference room, so welcome everyone. We're continuing with our study session, and our final item this evening is a discussion regarding the evaluation process for City Council's direct report. Council has a copy of the agenda memorandum, and I'll begin our discussion by handing it over to Nikki Macklin, our Director of Community Services.
Good evening, Nikki Macklin. Nice to see you all here. It's sort of awkward. I have to think it's a little more nerve-wracking in here than it is up there. But the intent of this presentation tonight is to highlight the survey feedback from City Council to evaluate and improve the performance review process for city and county managers, city and county attorney, and the municipal judge. The goal in this process is really to strengthen communication, accountability, and alignment through a consistent, transparent, and effective evaluation process. So the mayor sent council a survey. Thank you all for participating in that survey and providing all of you for providing your feedback. Tonight, we're going to walk through the results of the survey. Certainly, if you have questions as I walk through, feel free to jump in and interrupt me. And then at the end, I will highlight some themes from the survey and provide you with some suggested action items just to get the discussion started. But certainly the intent of the discussion is yours. If you'll advance to the next slide. So the first question was, I understand the purpose and importance of evaluating our direct reports. There was strong consensus among the respondents that they understand the purpose and the importance of evaluating direct reports. Next slide. Council has a clear and shared purpose for the evaluation process. Most of the respondents feel there's some lack of clarity or shared understanding among council members regarding the purpose of the evaluation process. Next slide. As you can see here, the majority of council agree or strongly agreed that the evaluations support alignment between leadership priorities and council/community goals. Next slide. The evaluation process should support both accountability and professional growth. The majority of council indicated a strong agreement with this statement.
The audio is broadcasting out in the chamber. That's the noise here. It's very loud, and it sounds like there's a party. So one moment, please.
The last thing you want is there were people. Two of me is a bit much. Yeah.
Sorry about that, y'all.
Okay.
It's first time.
Let's go one more, Curtis, and then we should be caught up. The evaluation process leads to meaningful performance improvements. There were mixed perceptions from council, with a notable portion expressing low agreement here. Next slide. Evaluation results inform key decisions such as compensation, contract renewal, and goal setting. Most of the respondents strongly agreed that the evaluation results influence important decisions. Next slide. Our evaluations provide actionable feedback that supports growth and change. There were mixed perceptions amongst council about the usefulness of the evaluation feedback. Next slide. The evaluation process contributes to improved organizational performance. Most of the respondents rated the statement positively, suggesting a general belief in the evaluation process's contribution to organizational performance. Next slide. Council as a body provides feedback to direct reports throughout the year, not just formal evaluations. The responses were really spread across this scale, with notable portions expressing low to moderate agreement. Next slide. I, as an individual elected official, provide feedback to each one of our direct reports throughout the year. The majority of the respondents generally agree that they provide individual feedback throughout the year. Next slide. We have structured ways to communicate expectations to direct reports outside of formal evaluations. Responses were spread across the scale, with the largest portion indicating low agreement, suggesting there's room for improvement in structured communication outside of formal evaluations. Next slide. Our direct reports generally know where they stand with council at all times. Most of the responses cluster around the middle here, indicating moderate agreement and potential uncertainty about consistent communication from the council. Next slide. I feel comfortable giving constructive feedback to direct reports. The majority of the responses are in the higher range, indicating that most participants feel comfortable giving constructive feedback. Next slide. Interpersonal or political dynamics do not prevent me from giving honest input. The majority of council felt that interpersonal or political dynamics did not hinder their honesty. Next slide. I would benefit from additional tools or training to improve how I evaluate and give feedback. The majority of council indicated a strong interest in receiving additional tools and training in this space. Next slide. Disagreements about evaluations among council members are handled respectfully and productively. The responses really were widely distributed here, indicating a range of opinions on how respectively and productively disagreements are handled. Next slide. The council shares a clear understanding of what success looks like in each direct report's role. The majority of the responses were on the lower end of the scale, suggesting uncertainty or lack of clarity regarding role-based success criteria. Next slide. Expectations and goals are clearly communicated to each direct report. The responses were distributed across the scale, with the largest group indicating moderate agreement that expectations and goals are clearly communicated. Next slide. We use defined, measurable criteria to evaluate performance. The responses were evenly distributed across this scale, indicating varied perceptions regarding the use of clear and measurable performance criteria. Next slide. Evaluations are aligned with community expectations. Most of the responses clustered around the middle, indicating a mixed opinion on whether evaluations aligned with community expectations or not. Next slide. The evaluation process is structured, fair, and evidence-based. The responses were evenly distributed here as well, with a slight peak at 3, indicating varied perceptions about the structure and fairness of the evaluation process. Next slide. We use a variety of inputs to inform evaluations. For example, council input, self-evaluation, staff, and community feedback. There was strong agreement that multiple sources are used in the evaluation process, though some respondents expressed lower agreement. Next slide. The process avoids being overly subjective or personality driven. The majority of the responses here were in the lower to mid range, suggesting some concern that the evaluation process may be influenced by subjectivity or personal bias. Next slide. The evaluation timeline and procedures are clearly defined and followed. Responses were polarized, with the highest counts on both ends of the scale, indicating a split in perception about the clarity and adherence to the evaluation timeline and procedures. Next slide. There would be a benefit to council utilizing an external third-party facilitator to assist with the evaluation process. The overwhelming majority strongly agree that involving an external third-party facilitator would be beneficial to the process. Next slide. Evaluation results are appropriately tied to pay or contract decisions. The majority of the responses are in the higher range, indicating a general agreement that the evaluation outcomes are appropriately linked to compensation or contract decisions. Next slide. Performance outcomes are applied consistently and transparently. Most of the responses were on the higher end, indicating general agreement that performance outcomes are handled consistently and with transparency. Next slide. Evaluations promote accountability while remaining constructive and supportive. The responses here were polarized, with the highest counts at both 2 and 5, reflecting a split in views on whether evaluations strike the right balance between accountability and support. So that was a lot to get through. What I have on the next couple of slides, if you want to advance, is I have tried to highlight some themes that have come out of this. This is, again, just a place to start. So I'm going to walk through those themes. Each one of these themes has a suggested action item that may be a good point of discussion for you. So if the council would like, we can go through these one at a time, or if you want to pause here for questions, again, this is really your time, so you let me know what would be best to accomplish what you hope to do tonight.
Yeah, I would recommend that we kind of suspend the Roberts rules and just have a discussion amongst us, because as you can see from the results, there's a lot of people with wildly differing opinions, and that's what's challenging about this process. There's 11 of us. We're part-time. We don't interact with our direct reports like normal supervisors. We don't work with them every day, right? So it's not an apples to apples decision to how we do this. When I first started on council in 2017, we used Employers Council, and it was just a survey that we filled out with 1, 2, or 3 ratings, and some people would put comments, most people didn't. And so the feedback from our reports on that was it wasn't enough evidence-based. It didn't come with any type of parameters or benchmarks or goals, so it didn't do enough. So then we kind of evolved to creating our own process with a very long list of KPIs, and it was handled by council. But then with a council member or council members handling it, it got a little off track. It didn't follow the normal schedule, things got missed, and things didn't happen when they should. And the feedback from the reports was this is not organized, this is not efficient. So we're kind of back full circle to, I think we need, and I think you agree, a third-party facilitator again, but to create a process that does allow for more feedback, a complete feedback loop, which we missed in the last iteration. So I'm happy to, to go through these and see where you guys feel we need to go. But I think I saw strongly that a third-party facilitator was a welcome return, because again, we're also busy. And this is another thing that we have to do.
And as you think about that third-party facilitator, one thing you may want to consider is what is it you want them to do, right? They can do everything from, I know you've acquired some different evaluation tools. They can give you different tools to choose from. We can create those tools for you in-house. You can utilize them to, as you said, facilitate the process in terms of this survey would be a great place for a consultant to start from. A lot of the work was done here. You guys have really done a good job providing your feedback and having a place to start. That person can administer the entire process from helping to create the evaluation tool. What is it that you want to measure for your appointees? How do you want to measure that? How often do you want to measure that? They can administer it. They can receive the results back, collate it, give it to you. Some of the feedback I have heard is, having these hard discussions is hard, right? And just because you're on council, not everyone may have necessarily supervised someone before or been trained in that space. And then, as the mayor said, there's 11 of you. That complicates it. And so even if you served as a leader in another organization, have you ever done a shared eval with 11 people? And thinking about your appointees as well. The entire purpose is to have a meaningful feedback loop. And so my suggestion would be at some point trying to evaluate bringing them into the fold, right? And understanding what's meaningful for all parties. So again, this was just a place to start. I've identified 8 different themes, and we can walk through them and then we can open it up for discussion. So around the clarity of the performance expectations and how you measure success, you all noted really a lack of a shared understanding about what that looks like for each role. So with 11 of you, that would make sense. There's a difference of opinion in what it looks like to be a successful city manager. And so I think part of this process would benefit you to clearly define and communicate those role-specific success metrics, which is a big piece of the process before. This can be a very lengthy and laborious process. And the one thing we should keep in mind is you have 3 appointees who have evaluations that are coming due if you honor the current schedule. And so hopefully that will be part of the conversation tonight. Is City Manager Hoffman has, one due in August or September. Then we've got Nancy, who's got one due in December, and then Judge Bachman in March. And so as you're designing this process, keeping that timeline in mind, or if we're not going to honor that timeline, are we going to push it out as you try to create something different? Another area was really strengthening the feedback frequency and quality. So currently this is happening once a year. There's some debate over whether there's meaningful feedback outside of that process. For some folks, that's happening routinely with your appointees, and for others, it's maybe not happening as frequently. And so there was acknowledgement that that's not happening frequently. And so do you want to consider some type of structured feedback cycle that exists more often than once a year, whether that's quarterly or biannually, also recognizing there's 11 of you and what's feasible in that process. Looking at increasing the structure, fairness, and transparency. So there were some concerns expressed around subjectivity and inconsistencies. And a suggested action around that is really trying to standardize the evaluation framework with clear rubrics and documentation to guide that application. Next slide. Yep, sure. You want to flush that? Yep, do like 3 at a time?
Yeah, that
whatever. Again, this is your process.
Would you like to give some feedback?
Yeah, I mean, on one of these so far, I mean, it just kind of just stands out to me. I mean, Jennifer and I had a meeting on Monday, yesterday, and it was good to just sort of catch up. And it should be like an encouraged process where you're meeting at least intentionally quarterly or biannually, you know, with your direct reports if you can, knowing the fact that we are not really paid to meet outside of our designated times. And then also, I think it's important to, and this could be just a suggestion, not a mandatory thing, but just to report back on what you talked about too, just so that all of council knows, maybe like what subject matters were talked about, just so that way there's like a shared knowledge of what was discussed and things like that. That's just my. And Todd and I want to do that quarterly.
Meet with your appointees quarterly?
Jennifer Hoffman at least quarterly, maybe Nancy, just depends, you know, on timing and schedule. Todd's schedule too, because he works full time and in the office too.
Councilmember Ward.
Thank you. I certainly think meeting quarterly for both the city and county manager, the city and county attorney would be appropriate. The municipal judge might be more appropriate to have a biannual or twice a year meeting, since we don't have quite as much direct communication with her or quite the same level of interaction that we do with the manager and the attorney. I think it's kind of strange that you would provide feedback once during your entire year as a body that does the supervision. I'm not going to throw anyone under the bus because they have had one-on-one meetings. I certainly have one-on-one meetings once a month with Manager Hoffman. But again, we work as a body. We speak as a body. The body needs to meet more frequently than once a year in order to provide that meaningful feedback. And I think it would provide council an opportunity to have kind of a better understanding of where are we in the process with meeting KPIs, or where is the litigation looking like, and where can we improve, et cetera. I know it takes time. This is our job.
Well, I would think if it's outside of performance, we wouldn't be able to have executive sessions. If it's off topic and anything to do with policy or litigation, then that would have to be a public meeting.
Yeah, I mean, anything that is within the scope of
Personnel
related, that would be within the quarterly meetings. If litigation happens to be part of that for whatever reason, then that's within the personnel. But I'm just throwing that out there because I needed the words to fill in the sentence. Jet lag brain, just a teeny bit. So, and I think that would probably help strengthen feedback and frequency in terms of clarifying performance expectations and success criteria. I think council really needs to sit down and decide what does success look like, because I certainly think each one of us defines success differently. Does success mean that they are showing up and everything is hunky-dory, or is success something different? Is success, like, I get the feeling from some council members that success is make us look good, and I don't want necessarily the hard facts. Obviously not, don't sugarcoat it and try and purposely try and make us look bad, but I prefer to have the facts and we make the decisions. That's our job. That's what I really have on that slide for right now.
All right, Councilmember Leslie.
I want to congratulate the city manager for initiating the strategic planning process, because not having had a strategic plan has been part of the problem. We have not come to formal agreement about what we're all doing together. But and maybe tonight's not the right time, but I'd really love to hear from City Manager Hoffman her perspective process, and it would be great to hear from the other two individuals as well.
Yeah, I think it's kind of awkward. Just the elephant in the room was we're talking about two of our importance that are sitting here. So, you know what? That's not a bad idea. It makes sense if we're collecting feedback and to have a meaningful process for us, that we would want the same for you both and Judge Bachman, since she's not here. So if you feel like you can contribute some feedback for us to help make this better, I welcome that too.
One suggestion you may wish to consider is providing them with a similar version of the survey that's also
Which is the first survey.
Yeah. Well, actually, at the two of us, one thing I want to point out, because I did pull up Judge Bachman's contract, and when she was appointed, you might recall that when we were in negotiation with her, it was very important to her that she's evaluated in gosh, and I don't even have jet lag to blame, in consistent with the judicial performance evaluation. So there's actually a structure for her, and it's in her contract. So just a side note about Judge Bachman.
If I can, she and I had that conversation a while back, because I think she misunderstood what her administrative role was vis-a-vis the judge's evaluation role. So she may have a different perspective than what her contract may have stipulated.
Yeah, we probably should address that, because since that time, she's become the director of municipal courts, which wasn't the case when she was first hired. So it's a great point.
Yeah.
Noted. Anything else, Councilman?
Well, yeah, I mean, we have 11 opinions around all of these things as we saw, but I just think it would be really valuable for the three of our direct reporters to join us and to give your perspectives, and then we only get 3 perspectives, which may be easier to handle. But I just really think it's important for us to weigh in what they need from us, not just what we need from them. So
absolutely. I mean, and I didn't mean to do it as an oversight, but I was trying to tackle this beast first. So if you guys wanted Ms. Macklin to prepare a survey similar to this to give your feedback, or would you rather just express it another way? Or, because we do want your feedback. We do. It doesn't have to be now. It doesn't have to be here, but the request is there.
We appreciate that. Jennifer's going to speak for me. Do my survey.
Well, as I was looking at the questions, I was answering them, of course, as all of us would.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, it's been making this journey, particularly with the council members that have been here since my tenure. So I'm going to look specifically at the mayor. It has been probably the most excruciatingly and debilitating and wonderful and fulfilling 5 years that I could have ever hoped for in a professional career. I think that where we are now as a council and as a staff, it's been 5 years of rebuilding. It's been 5 years of cleanup. It's been 5 years of discovery, and it feels like just now we're able to take that breath. So I think it comes at a time to where it's consistency. It's consistent understanding that the goalpost isn't going to constantly be moving based on the environment that we're in. So what are the rules of engagement? I was explaining to Councilmember Hinkle that the one-on-ones that I have, just for an example, with Councilmember Ward and Councilmember Delgadillo, those monthly meetings, they do more for me than I'm sure I do for the council members from information and engagement. But it's developing that personal insight of what's important to you. And then that becomes my filter through which I process what comes next. And if you don't have that understanding of what is important to the other person, and it just comes from the dais, it's very difficult with 11 of you. Mm-hmm. So and then being able to take that back to staff, that we're in alignment. And what's most critical right now is that our budget is in alignment. As we move into these budget conversations, these are, we are not in the place that we have been historically. We will not be again in the future because of the property tax. So I spent a lot of time with the mayor. I don't think there's a day that goes by that we're not in communication.
I come in early before a council meeting.
Yeah.
We, stay up to date.
And so it's daily contact. It's daily contact with the Mayor Pro Tem. I think the Mayor Pro Tem's level of engagement is something that I haven't seen before with Councilmember Schaaf, and that makes a really significant difference. The partnership makes a significant difference. So it gives it, I'm going to speak for Nance, but it makes it anxious with new councils.
Yeah.
Not because of the members and not because of what they're bringing forward, but because, again, the dynamics from the exchange with the mayor and Mayor Pro Tem and these daily communications, we're in a rhythm. You get in a rhythm. So I think the evaluation process is just being really honest and forthright and not wanting or expecting us to read between the lines to only get it wrong.
And how can we achieve that consistency? How do you envision that? Like,
I don't pick three things and say, hammer on this, hammer on this, hammer on this. Here's what success looks like. Success looks like specifically, right? Those are kind of what the key performance indicators are. I mean, a lot of times with evaluations, it's, am I doing a good enough job for you to keep me? And if the answer is yes, why? Council's always been fair with pay. I think for Nancy and I are both in agreement with that. I think what Ms. Macklin has been able to do over the last couple of years is really formalize that. So just, again, the straightforward dialogue conversations, particularly as we go into the next 2 years with really difficult financial decisions that will have to be made that we haven't had to make before. Mm-hmm. And all of us being on the same page sounds so cheesy, but that we're headed in the same direction.
That's helpful. Councilmember Delgadillo.
Thank you.
So since you mentioned 3 areas, I thought it was a good time to bring up my comment on success criteria, which is we don't have to go with this. I proposed when in the evaluation sessions, it sounded like there were 3 themes that kind of came up for the council members, which was the partnership with council, responsiveness to the community, and operational excellence, right? And I feel like operational excellence is one of the things that we don't have very good insight into, just because that's the day-to-day, that's that sort of thing. And it's very, I think that stuff is obviously very, very important because it's kind of, in a way, I see that as a leading indicator in order to get that good community service that we want, right? The organization has to work well. And so I do emphasize, I sometimes feel bad when Jennifer comes back with, oh, I broke down all these silos. And I'm like, that's like really hard. It's so hard to do, right? But what we see is obviously more of that, did we get what we wanted at a certain time, right? So I think we over-index sometimes on what is visible to us versus the things that are very, very important and are totally invisible unless they are going wrong. And so I think there's a little bit of, you can be a victim of your own success in that way. So those were kind of 3 areas I proposed. Within that, you can potentially have a breakdown of specific things. So like the community KPIs, right? Those are good things that could fall into those. You prioritize those. And I'm sure we could come up with more robust criteria in the other areas as well, because I do think, you know, for lots of our colleagues, right, that partnership with council and having that good relationship, that is really important, right? That is certainly a thing. And I do think that there should be a venue for that. We just need to be clear that that's one of many things, right? There are multiple pillars. We all got to say in that. My comment?
Ms. Rogers?
Thank you. No, either works.
It feels so casual.
I thought we were casual. Yeah, I thought you weren't speaking. Against the advice of counsel. I definitely agree with Jennifer that it would be nice to have a consistent process and have some knowledge of what it's going to be and know that it's not going to change. I mean, to me, the most important thing is feedback. And this is where I think it's okay that there's 11 of you and you don't agree, because I'll take Austin's feedback, even though it might be diametrically opposed to what Devin told me yesterday, but it's just feedback, sort of professional feedback. It's not really about the bigger picture, like Jen said. Are we going the right direction? Are you doing the job that you want to do? You can still say yes and say, and this didn't hit me right. As your supervisor, I really want to talk to you about this. You know, your presentation tonight was too flippant, or it didn't have information, or it bugged me, you didn't reach out to Judge Bachman. That's just good feedback. I want a process where you all feel that you can give us feedback independent of each other, and that you might disagree with somebody, and it's up for Jennifer and I to take that into account. Now, it's got to be helpful and authentic. And I think the authenticity can be really hard because you might be worried you're going to go against what another council member says. And just for me, I want to tell you that that feedback's really important because we don't hear it, I mean, from other places or people, right? So the other thing that, yeah, I agree with Jen, but when it comes to deciding, am I the attorney for you? Am I the person that take you in the direction that you want the city manager to go in and support you legally? And if I'm not, that's okay. And it's time for you to move on. I think that's sort of separate from the ongoing feedback discussion too. Like the two can exist. You can say, I'm going to give you some really harsh feedback, and I still really like the work you're doing, and I'm glad you're here. And I feel like there's been a hesitancy to give feedback. For whatever reason, it's hard. As a supervisor, I'll admit that it's hard. Paloma, to what you said, that operational excellence, I've mentioned this in my evals. It is important to me that you find out what's going on inside the walls and get input from employees and department heads. And I don't know if Jennifer and I are on the same page on that. I think if operational excellence is gonna be a criteria of success, you've got to hear what the people inside the walls are talking about. So that is a component that's really important to me.
That's helpful.
May I share some just general HR feedback?
Absolutely.
I think in listening to you all, both council and your appointees, what you're experiencing is not unique to Broomfield, right? Performance evaluations are hard, they're a pain in the butt, and no one likes to go to do them or to receive them. And so what you're trying to create is a way to deliver and receive meaningful feedback that is not a heavy lift. And so I think that is why a lot of organizations are going to more frequent touch bases instead of this heavy lift of an annual eval process. So whether that's quarterly, whether that's biannually, they're also looking at shorter things. So as you described, let's pick 3 things so that it doesn't feel that heavy. And it's something that we can do quarterly or biannually. And I heard Jennifer say the same thing, is just help me do that. When you pick fewer things and you're measuring them more frequently, they are sprints and everybody can see the end in sight. And then you can celebrate when you're there. It also is not so long of a period of time that if there are things that are bothering you, you have an opportunity to share that, and they have an opportunity to respond pretty quickly and pivot. I think what's happening right now is folks are getting frustrated and they're stuffing it and they're stuffing it, they're stuffing it, right? And it's a year before some people feel like they have an opportunity to share that. And so when that comes out at the end of the year, it's big and it can be ugly. And the person's like, whoa, wait a minute, right? But if it's every 90 days and we all have our eyes on the same 3 prizes, the likelihood for success on all ends is so much greater. I think making the expectations clear on the front end, that repeatable process, everybody knows. It's every 90 days, every 6 months, it's rinse, wash, and repeat. There are also, and then this is something we're doing internally as we change our evaluation system. So we moved to an evaluation platform that's electronic. We had old archaic papers and it was a heavy lift. But trying to create a system that is nimble enough for you to quick get in and to provide, maybe you're keeping notes as you go, right? So that when you get to the end of the 90 days, the end of the 6 months, whatever period you pick, it's all right there. And you each have an opportunity to provide your own feedback, sort of similar to what you did with Employers Council. Right now I feel like you all get in a room and some talk, some don't talk. It's hard to be able to say that at the end of the year, but if you each had your own vehicle to share your feedback in a way that you could compile it in a unified voice, you could make notes as things come up. Some of the systems even will let you provide direct feedback in the moment. Maybe you don't have time to pop in for a one-on-one, but you want to make note of something, and maybe you create a system that has line of sight where Jennifer can see that right away and you're engaging in a dialogue that way.
Nikki, can I say something right now? So I'm feeling very overwhelmed with what you just said.
Okay.
So 2 things. One, I like the evaluation. I do. I think evaluations make us more intentional, more engaged, thoughtful, and when they are done right, and I've haven't necessarily been on the receiving end of it, but I try to focus with our teams, with whether it's a direct report, whether it's whatever that line supervisory from an employee perspective, that feedback helps us as an organization grow. And it helps us deepen relationships with the person that's sitting across the table from you, even if you don't call it an evaluation. Every day we're evaluated. We are evaluated constantly. And I think, again, it's having identified rules of engagement and the repeatable process, and we manage those expectations. I can say that having an immediate feedback loop, no, thank you.
Sure, that's fair.
And the new process that you implemented does that?
No, and I'm giving options. The one thing I heard Jennifer say, and when I look around at the relationships that are strong, is what you're describing. Those that meet regularly, right, for those informal conversations where you can sit across the table, those are the strong working relationships. And that's what you're all trying to build, right? Is a strong working relationship. So the feedback loop doesn't have to be instant. It doesn't have to be a formal eval. That's probably more valuable than anything. And so how do you create that opportunity where you each have your own working relationship and can provide that feedback in terms of what's true for you, but what's representative of the collective body in a way that's relatively quick, not instant, but better than a year from now, so that if there is something, you can say what's true for you, you can say what's true for you, and there's an opportunity to pivot and figure out how to move forward.
Hey, it was
pretty
just that
quickly.
instantaneous thing.
No, no.
I was just like, oh.
Here's your daily feedback.
No,
plan.
Exactly. I was thinking, oh.
But I think what's happening, like you're saying right now, there is no form.
No.
And that's what's
Well, the
missing.
problem, yeah, we don't have a standard operating procedure. We don't have a process that's defined and repeatable. We don't have a policy.
Yeah.
So in the absence of a policy, look what happens. That's bad policy. So maybe that is part of the issue, is that, it keeps getting handed on to a new group of people and through attrition, and it didn't work, so we change it. And so the next group is going to have the same problem if we don't try to create that repeatable, consistent process. Because this cast of characters is ever changing, whereas our reports are going to probably be here for a while. So I think that to honor them, we should create a repeatable process when we find out what it is, and immortalize it for the future.
Good.
MPD.
I think when I looked at your themes, and I thought they were very helpful to start to break all of this information down. I think that the thing that popped out to me most was the third-party facilitator that kept coming back to me as like, that's something I think that we all mostly, for the most part, agree on. And so I think that when I looked at these key action items, in that figuring out what it is that we can do and what it is that third-party facilitator needs to help us do. So just on these three alone, I think that we can look at the strength and feedback, frequency and quantity, just as Councilmember Ward said, it probably needs to be quarterly. And I think that we could gravitate around that probably quarterly is better than once a year, or maybe biannual is better than once a year. But moving to more frequency is better. But the other two areas, 1 and 3, we probably need a consultant to help us determine those pieces. And so I think that that's one piece that I'm trying to evaluate, is what do we need that third party consultant for to help us, and then what are those things that we can do by ourselves.
2 and 3, definitely third party. Yeah. Consultant. Are you guys okay with something that's more frequent? Or do you have any opinions on that? A quarterly or biannual?
I wrote down 90 days was too much.
Yeah.
Too often.
Too often.
Not
So
enough
more-
changes
yeah.
in between those 90 days.
That's too quick.
And I also don't want to defer a meeting with you by being like, you know what, we're going to all meet in a month. Let's talk about it then. I think out of this conversation, what I'm hearing is if we should be doing the one-on-one meetings when council wants. Like sometimes we don't want to. I know, Kenny, when you joined council, I called you and you said, I feel good right now. I'll let you know if I need anything, and you call when you need it. Like, so 90 days is too much. 120 days. What is that? 3 times. So triannual.
But I mean, again, to clarify, there's a difference between one-on-ones and having feedback.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So again, that feedback loop, I feel, and I only go off of the council members that I meet with consistently.
Mm-hmm.
They have a deeper understanding of the level of operational excellence just by the mere conversations that we have. They understand the management style. There isn't as much conjecture when you're doing those, and it's not even a check-in, right? I mean, sometimes it's 20 minutes. Sometimes it's in person, sometimes it's over coffee, sometimes it's lunch, sometimes it's virtual. Again, it's those touch points. I think the overall kind of that evaluation process biannually is more than sufficient. and having those, that level of engagement that only comes when you develop a relationship. So then it's not the last thing on your mind. We're coming into an evaluation, even if it's twice a year, and something occurs that leaves a bad taste in your mouth, that's what you're going to be evaluated on, is that instant. So again, I think it's those checkpoints throughout the year that make a significant difference. It shouldn't be surprised. If I had any staff that was coming biannually and I, said to Dan, hey, I haven't said this before, but this is really a huge deal. I'm sure Dan would look at me and go, I see you all the time, right? You have to be able to have those conversations to say, this is where I am, this is what's happening, this is what's happening. And I think a third-party facilitator,
it's more for the administrative part of this, which is a lift for any of us.
Absolutely.
It's not any, and none of us could do this.
Yep.
Or should really, because it is time intensive.
Yeah. Yeah, you're operationalizing it.
And I think that's where offloading it is appealing.
I think having clarity too on what is the intent of your evaluation. So is the evaluation used to determine if you're going to continue with a contract? Is it used to determine a merit increase? If you're providing regular, it certainly shouldn't be the time we're providing feedback on someone's performance, but that's what oftentimes happens, right? So if you're having these regular touch points, then that's when you're able to give meaningful feedback. But what's the intent of this evaluation that you're doing? And maybe that helps inform how frequently you're doing it.
Okay. Councilmember Wynn.
I just want to say that, for me, giving feedback and evaluations, I feel like this process is a big lift, especially with 10, 11, supervisors, bosses, whatever you want to call us. And overall, when I look at the quality of work, I do look at the accomplishments, the big lifts that we've accomplished in this council. And overall, I think, I do gravitate towards the hits. And for me, it's been kind of like a sponge, you're absorbing so much.
Sure.
And so I think for one thing, I don't think it's fair to make you do more for just doing your job, if that makes sense. And for me, it's kind of like, I recognize that, we're a city and county. We're doing dual role purposes all the time. And that includes for you guys as well. So I think what I'm trying to say here is, I do like what we have right now, because I'm coming in as a new person, a new council, and I'm sure we're gonna have new faces soon, but I do like the idea of having a consistent evaluation. I don't think we need to do, more than 4 times a year. And I know that's it is kind of a weird dynamic where things are. And I do expect us having more issues in terms of city and county budgetary issues. And that's going to be, on everyone's mind in the next 3-4 years from now. So, and of course, I was pretty positive on, I think, not to out myself, but I gave pretty really good scores. But I do recognize that on the dais, on the council, you guys give a lot of good answers, and often I feel like you guys are doing a good job. City and county's on fire. We're making big changes and big lifts right now. So.
Okay.
A little bit of feedback. Just, I like that you said, the evaluation part of it, when we're meeting with you maybe twice a year. That's a better point. It's different than when you're just meeting with them to discuss issues. Because I didn't really even discuss your specific performance yesterday when we were meeting. I was just talking about other issues that I hadn't heard about yet, or I just wanted to know progress on. So I think that part is really important. I also think that it could be abused if we don't put side rails on how often someone meets with you. Because we could have a council member come on board and they want to meet with you weekly just to touch base. So I just want to be careful about, how many times one council member meets with you just to touch base, because that process could be abused, and I don't know what that looks like. I don't have a definition of it. It could be abused in that sense. So.
I don't know how I don't know how regulating that, other than Nancy and I regulating that.
Yeah.
Right? Like, okay, I mean, again, those are part of those conversations of reiterating, right? Council acts as a body. These conversations, it's not unlike when we have candidates that every election, right? They write in questions, and we take those questions and we publish them so that everybody can see what those questions are. If you have a council member, and Nancy and I've been doing this long enough, that if you have one coming in constantly, part of the first feedback and dialogue, and that's why it's so important with the mayor and mayor pro tem, that relationship. And I know Nance feels this way, Nance, right? I don't know what you're gonna say. That from a CMO perspective with the mayor and mayor pro tem, those are critical to our success. That is critical to our operational, organizational success. And so my feedback, Councilmember Hinkle, if I started feeling that, I wouldn't have any issues at all saying you need to circle back with your mayor, or set up a meeting with Mayor Pro Tem and the mayor. And then I'm going to get guidance from the mayor and mayor pro tem on what this looks like on that issue as we move forward. Okay. 20-second conversation, I wouldn't hesitate having it.
Okay.
You can set your own boundaries.
Absolutely. I'm a good boundary.
I think the key concerns are that maybe a council member might know more than another council member. So I think if you have those one-on-one meetings, I think it is important though that people hear as much as you can. I don't know if you can do this, but there is concern amongst some council that a council member might know more about something that's maybe critical that other council members don't. So I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what that equity looks like.
That's interesting. I think we're dealing with that already, because there's been times where when you all email CMO crew, we just respond to you, or staff does. And there's times when we say, we're going to loop in all of council. I mean, Jean Lori and I and Pat Gilbert meet once a month to talk about oil and gas. So they are far more informed than any of you on the oil and gas space right now. But it's all consistent with what Pat sends out to everybody. So I think if there's something that came up that we said, oh, we need to get this to all of council, we're living that right now. So if we're not doing that would be the feedback for you to say, hey, Councilmember Ward mentioned from the dais that, well, in my meetings with the city attorney, she told me X, Y, Z. I wish I had known that before I heard it from the dais, Nance. You should have said that to all of council. You should have done a memo for all of council, so we knew that was out, that opinion was out there before. That's great feedback for me to know, because I think we do sort of play that game like, oh, is this a time when this CMO crew response we should copy all of council and loop them in, or is this really just Devin's question special to him? I mean, so we're struggling with that issue today, and I think we've hit a good spot. But if we're not, I think that's great feedback.
I haven't heard before.
Yeah,
it would have been nice to know, but I think that's just experience, and we're working with council. So
yes, Councilmember Leslie.
I want to go back to the strategic plan, because you talk a little bit around the idea of what are the measures, what's important, what are the priorities, what are the KPIs. When the council adopts the strategic plan, that is the statement we're making to the public that those are our priorities. And those are our expectations for the city manager and her entire team, not just the three that report directly to us. So the point I'm making here is we should not only take that action as a high priority for us vis-a-vis the whole thing that we're all here to serve, but specifically to include the three people who report directly to us. From that should come the evaluation. Are you helping us get there? That's really the question, isn't it? There being what we've just defined as this very good, I think very effective process that is initiated appropriately from staff. But the question to all of us the other night was, are we all in alignment? And the answer was, yeah, not only are we in alignment, And several of us offered our, little amendments to it. But we are, with staff, in alignment with where we want the city to go. That's the critical element, as I said a minute ago, that's really been missing. We will have that now. So building the evaluation off of that, whether you use a third party or whatever, that's really the point. What happens above that in terms of, do I like the way they're doing it? Do I feel that they should be doing something different? Again, those are the individual conversations, as has been said to us. But most importantly, from the mayor and mayor pro tem, when they sit down with the leadership to say, yeah, this is how it's being expressed or not being expressed. This is where we need you to step up or step down, as the case may be. And I don't mean fire. I mean, just quiet down or slow down on this thing. But that's the foundation to the evaluation.
When are we adopting the strategic plan? Before the end of the year, or is it next year?
It's next year.
Okay.
So what our teams, so now that council has, now that we are all in alignment at the 30,000 foot level, those KPIs now goes back to our individual champion teams so they can see that outcome, and now they put the measurements in.
Okay.
I think another, from a transparency perspective, 2026 and 2027 is going to be the year of transparency by design, and that is because of ERP, right? All of the 340 spreadsheets that we've been working off of will now be transitioned into the ERP. But we'll also have a dashboard that reflects that strategic plan and where we are, right? So it won't be a quarterly presentation update just for the wonderful residents that show up every single time. But for the public, right, that public-facing dashboard of here's what we're trying to get, and it will reflect, everybody loves transparency until your transparency indicates that you're not quite making it, which is a positive thing.
Yeah.
So what tweaks do we need to make? But so that dashboard is something that Councilmember Leslie, you and I have been talking about for 3.5 years, and that will finally come to fruition as well.
Anyone else have any thoughts, suggestions? Do we move on to the next slide? This is a great conversation, by the way. Thank you.
Next slide, Curtis, please. Align evaluations with strategic outcomes. Thank you, Bruce, for teeing that up. Most agree that evaluations should support broader leadership, council, and community goals. So the suggested action is to connect evaluations to high-level strategic objectives and use results to guide organizational direction. So thank you for, I paid Bruce to say that. Incorporate diverse feedback. We've heard some on both council and appointee side here. Currently, there's really limited use of multi-source input. And so one suggested action is to consider multi-rater and or 360-degree feedback practices to include council and direct reports. Enhance council-wide understanding of the evaluation purpose. So there's a strong individual understanding, but there's inconsistent shared comprehension. So one idea might be to host some type of collaborative workshop, or the work that you are going to do when you engage your facilitator naturally would include getting all of the council members aligned on the purpose, the benefit, and the structure of the evaluation. So
that's where I have questions too, because when we start to interview potential consultants, what does that look like? Do we have it in a public meeting?
Yeah. So we teed up that.
Nikki teed up this question.
Yeah, so Nancy, if you want me to read it.
So we did this with trash. That was a full RFP process. The dollar amount of this contract and that it's a professional service contract doesn't require an RFP process. So you have a couple options. Nikki can bring you one candidate after it's been vetted and you all can decide, but that can happen. That discussion can happen in executive session. It's direction to negotiators say, all right, Nikki, either yes, we like the person you brought us, or we've looked at the 3 you brought us. We want you to do a negotiated contract with this one on this terms. Then that contract gets approved in the public meeting. So we'll follow what we did for trash.
What if we want to meet them or.
Yep,
the
same thing,
Zoom.
that can be in the. Yeah, it would be
private
in, I
closed
mean,
door meeting.
yeah, my recommendation is probably not more than 3, because it's like being a kid in a candy shop, right? There are a million
Yeah.
people out there that do this. If you sort of said, here is what we want their scope to be.
And we have our needs.
You have your needs.
Documented.
You know, identifying those people, there may be that you say, we know we want these 2, can you find us 1 more? We know we want this 1, can you find us 2 more? I would bring those forward. I would suggest we set up sort of an interview process, or maybe they present, here's what I have to offer you, followed by some Q&A. Like Nan said, you guys come to a collective.
And our reports could attend as well, right?
Yeah.
You could,
Yeah.
yeah, you can invite whoever you want to an executive session that you want. And yeah, instead of staff presenting, the applicants would present. Then maybe all the applicants would leave, and they wouldn't be here for their presentations because they're going to be talking about possibly how they can do it differently than their competitor. And then you could continue the meeting to say, okay, who's everybody leaning toward, and give Nikki direction at that point.
With a non-formal vote.
Yes, yeah, yeah, very similar to what we did in track.
Yeah. I think that would be a great way for you guys to identify
that's
who you
wonderful.
want. Fit is going to be important. The reality is you can define the scope. I mean, most of them are going to offer you the same product-ish. I think really understanding public sector is going to be key. You know, if someone has not dealt with 11-person council providing feedback, that takes a special understanding in terms of how that works. And so I think that would be a great next step, especially since that is one area there is consensus, right? Everybody would agree.
We do all agree.
I think it would be important to sort of identify what is the scope, right? And we can sort of look through that. I think one thing I heard loud and clear was training, really understand that process. But I would anticipate whoever you pick, take this survey, do an intake with you to make sure they understand what it is you want, that they would create that tool. The reality is most of them have tools in their back pocket. You know, the eval form is the least of your worries, but to Bruce's point, it is not uncommon once you have that strategic plan in place to take those and utilize those as your criteria by which you would evaluate your appointees.
Okay.
When I go back to, that was the last one. I don't know if you want to have conversation around that, or there are 2 more.
I feel like when we do that, though, just to piggyback on that, it would be nice to kind of have, you could maybe help us, maybe Nikki, on like, how are we going to evaluate them? Right? We need like a standard sort of rubric to evaluate them. And they might even come in with their own sort of costs or contract, like a trash company would, is that right?
Yeah, so I think looking at, you know, all the different criteria. What is your scope of services? Do you offer the tool? Do you offer automation of the tools? Are you going to compile the results? Are you going to come in and present those results to council? What is the cost for each one of those? Do you provide training to council to provide that feedback? Most of them are not going to come in and have the hard conversation for you. I can tell you that right now, right? But they can train you and equip you for how to deliver that information. And then we can create, to your point, sort of a score sheet of here are the different areas that council's measuring that, and that's something I'm happy to put together for you. And then we can sort of rough tally where folks are at. There also, in my opinion, is sort of a gut element when you interview people like that for fit, which I use a tool that's called a forced choice paired comparison, where you're just saying, of all the things I heard tonight, if I had to compare Guyleen and Heidi, Guyleen and Bruce, Guyleen and Jean, I'm picking. So I'm having a forced choice paired comparison with each one of those that then produces a score that gives you an overall fit evaluation. So I think I would need direction, and if tonight is not the night from council, you know, is it, you want me to find 3 people? You have some people in mind, so that's something that you may want to discuss. The other 2, just to keep us moving forward, one we've talked about here is providing training and tools. So many felt unprepared or under-supported, and so making sure that if it is not the consultant that we find to help you facilitate this process, there is certainly training available outside of that. I'm not worried about. Those two don't have to be coupled. I wouldn't limit yourself there. And we have access through Employers Council,
Through
for a
SRSA
number
too.
through sources, right, for a number of different trainings there. And then last but not least, consider external facilitation. So we've talked around that ad nauseam tonight.
Well, I say let's just start, moving forward with trying to select a third-party facilitator. I did speak with Manager Hoffman about if she wanted to postpone her evaluation till we get the process in place, and she was agreeable to that. So
Don't want to go, let's
don't want to go
see
down
what
that
this
road.
guy- let's
Yeah.
go.
So we're fine on time. Thank you. And I would rather get this right. So
Yeah, and it might change the time because the only one of us that has a requirement is Amy.
And hers is
Hoffman.
every
Hers is March. Her contract actually expires.
it's not auto renewed.
It's not auto renewed.
And it's up next year.
It's up in March.
Okay.
I think we could do a short extension. That might be an option.
I think we'll have it in place
Yeah.
by then. I'm confident, and I don't know if I'll be here, but I think I will. But still, I think
talking about that now.
Well, I mean, there is an election, so if it's whatever we do before November, we'll know it's going. So I would like to get it sewed up before that, if possible.
As far as
Instead of leaving it
selecting
hanging.
third parties, does council want to send me suggestions offline?
Yes, because I
Okay.
have one that CML has proposed. I think a lot of you know her, June Ramos. She doesn't charge for travel, and she's worked with municipalities. So she's got two of the pluses. We should interview her and see what kind of tools she's used. And
How many would you like to see?
three? Three sound good?
Sounds good.
Let's do three.
Are there any besides June that are top of mind for folks?
Austin, did you hear back on any other?
No, I haven't been able, since I just got back Sunday, I have not been able to schedule my meetings with some of the other surrounding / state cities and counties on what processes they use with their manager evaluations. But I will be having those. So if some do come up, I can certainly send them your way, Nikki, along with council. But yeah.
I know you just got back.
Can you provide me a little bit direction in terms of what is the scope you want this facilitator to do for you?
Well, they need to meet with council and our reports to get on the same page as what are we evaluating, right? Incorporate.
So designing the evaluation
Design
tool.
it, yeah, customize it for our goals and our strategic plan.
Do you have a strong preference on whether they be the person that administers the eval in terms of once the tool is designed, do you want them to be the ones that push it out, that collect and collate the
I do,
results?
yes. Austin? Did you?
I mean, I'm fine if they're the ones that kind of put it out, collect it, and compile the information. I was also going to add, I think there should be some element of training, because I think there are many on council who either, or at least some on council, who either don't know or don't feel comfortable providing feedback, as because many of us have never been in a leadership position, supervisor position. So knowing how to do that can be challenging. I would say I'm probably in that category of I may not know exactly how best to provide feedback.
Well, I don't think any of us ever done it 11 on 1.
And that certainly provides
Oh, you
a
did. Okay.
different, that certainly does provide a different element or a dynamic. So figuring out how to work that would be beneficial, I think, for council.
Wanted to go back to the customizing the evaluation goals. I agree with Bruce that the KPIs for the reports should match the strategic plan. So I'm trying to figure out the timing of this. Are we going forward with, having the consultant do the customization of evaluation goals when we don't have the strategic plan, and then in a year we're going to say we need a different evaluation plan because now we finally have the KPIs?
I think part of it will be, it's an iterative process. So part of it is you're trying to pick a consultant that is a good fit for you, right? I would say the strategic plan is close enough that if you look at what those categories are, competencies that you would be looking at, they're going to have a general idea of how to build that tool. And then it's really taking, okay, you've got these 5 areas. How do you want to measure them? And I envision the consultant really being most valuable to you in terms of doing an intake, figuring out sort of, like I said, this survey was the first start to sort of get your feedback, but there will be more of that that helps shape that. So I don't think you're quite as far off as maybe you think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Well, I guess my question is for the rollout and for the future of the plan, will we have the same consultant again in like 2 years from now, or would it be?
I think it depends on what you're utilizing them for. So it may be that they get you started, they sort of walk you through this first process. Once the tool is developed, once you're trained in giving feedback, it may be that you drop back and we only use them to administer the plan. So Employers Council did that for us. We call them up, we say, we're ready to do this. Can you go ahead and here's the current council, here's their 11 emails. Can you push it back, push it out to them? The deadline's in 2 weeks. When you get the results, hand them off and we share them. So I think it can really look however you want it to look. I would not anticipate your largest investment in this consultant is going to be on the front end to sort of get it to where it needs to be. And then it really is a self-contained process moving forward.
That answers my question.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I would like to have a person to be sort of a facilitator in the discussion and the feedback loop as well.
We can ask for that. I think it's hard to find. I think, because most people, they don't want to be stuck in that, right?
Yeah.
I'll be just real candid. But I think if you are all trained and the tool is set up the right way, you're going to feel like you need less of that. So I think the problem was there was no tool, right? So you came to the table and it was like, what does everybody think? And you're trying to formulate your ideas. Sometimes they're hard to say, sometimes they're hard to hear. Having a well-designed tool will be really critical for you all to be able to provide your individual feedback. Then when they collate all those results, it will create a council voice. You'll have written feedback to give your direct reports that they have an opportunity to read in advance of sitting down with you, right? So we're not hearing it for the first time. And I think once you go through that training, it will help to equip folks to say the hard things, right? Or to figure out, how do I phrase this in a way that, how do I make expectations clear on the front end? I mean, I think that's a piece of this is missing. And that probably will come to play depending on the consultant you pick. Is sometimes it's designing the process, and then it is, I can't evaluate you on this for another year because I haven't made clear what my expectations are.
But I think what we do have from the strategic plan process so far is what are our organizational values? And we can implement those. And is, we're here to serve our citizens, or is our, staff here guiding these values? And some thoughts? Anything else? Okay, so our plan is to move forward and recruit a third-party facilitator. We're going to pick 3 to start with and set up interviews, get their information, and then set up a exec session interview. If they're local, they could be in person. But I know the one I recommended doesn't live here, but she comes here a lot because she works here a lot. So,
and Nancy said those would be exec sessions.
Yeah. So as soon as we know what date we can do that request for exec session.
Is your preference that you interview them all on the same night?
No one.
I suggest not.
No? Okay.
More time spent with them. And if you're going to be trying to put that on top of everything else.
Dating. Yeah. Not good.
Yeah.
At first, I did too. We've done this so many times. No, probably not. Devin, did you have something?
No, it's something different. So I just.
Okay, well, you said what?
So I think that the three things that we want out of this consultant. So we want, the collaborative workshop to align all council members on the purpose, benefits, and structures of the evaluation. So that was one piece that came out. There is the consultant would design and administer the evaluation tool. So that was the other part. And then the third piece for that evaluation tool would be the criteria for the report should match that strategic plan. And so the criteria for that evaluation
I didn't
tool.
get a chance to write it down. Can you send that to me?
Sure.
Did you get it, Nikki?
I did, but I would greatly benefit from his.
Yeah.
Right.
And then I think that, and I think Councilmember Henkel brought this up, is the training and tools piece. I think that, as you said, that might have to be a different consultant because it may not align with this consultant, but that would be a fourth thing, that it may be a different consultant that we would need.
I can't believe I'm going to say this out loud, so I might walk it back. But as I think about you all trying to interview 3 people in a row, right? I mean, you're not going to want to spend less than 30, 45, 60 minutes with each person. Is there any value in some type of initial spark hire interview type thing to narrow the 3, or would you prefer to meet with them all, in, which means you all still have to watch it. It's not saving you any time.
And spark hire is only one way.
Correct. It would have to be almost like them giving you a presentation of what they have to offer, which likely is what would happen when they come in here. They're going to do some type of sales pitch.
Right.
And then you're going to ask Q&A. So I don't know if there's any, if it streamlines the process at all.
How do y'all feel about that?
If we release the RFP and there's more than 3, then.
And you don't have to do an RFP because it's a professional service, and to be honest, in my opinion, I
So you're just
would not
targeting
expedite.
individuals that you think.
Yeah. Yep.
Give
The
them a
consultancy
load
don't
that you
have to.
think you might want to.
Yep.
That have relevant municipal experience. That's where it, you open it up to everybody. You're going to get.
And that's how we typically, I mean, to be honest, when we pick a professional service, so if I'm looking for someone to come in and do facilitation for a group of employees that aren't getting along, go through that process.
Okay. Then are you feeling the spark hire or no?
No, okay, so you want 3 presentations on the same night or not the same night? I'm sorry. Not the same night.
Not the same
So it would
night.
be 3 different executive sessions.
Yep.
And we'll just take copious notes and have score sheets and that help you.
So they're going to be an add-on to 3 consecutive regularly scheduled council meetings?
So your
council meetings are packed. Yeah.
We met like 6 times this month.
These are coming until the end of the year. Those exec sessions that are going to be after will probably be around the 10 o'clock hour.
Can you do 5:15 to 6?
Nobody gets here at 5:15. Well, who are you kidding? Like 2 people do.
So that's why I question if they're going to be 3 on a separate night, because that's what I was thinking. Is I looked ahead at the agendas and they look pretty dense, and what hour are we going to be able to do this, and on 3 different nights after a meeting? And so I don't know if it's practical to think we're going to schedule 3 other nights besides our regular meetings where we're going to do those interviews, not back to back. I don't know.
Here's another consideration is, the CML is a pretty reputable body. They've recommended June. You've teased her out a little bit. Is that a place to start? It doesn't mean you have to go with her. We could share, we could certainly share information with her, and I don't know her from Adam. So I don't even know if
I met her on a Google Meet.
It certainly could be something that to share information and people, give a nudge on whether that's a comfortable enough source, or if you want to consider, you want to have multiple options.
I'm okay with that, but
Yeah.
Let's go with her first.
try her first. Okay. comes highly recommended.
That doesn't mean you don't have to interview her. We can do one exec session where you all meet her.
Yeah.
And if after that you say, not feeling it, go ahead and find me one or two more. They can do that too.
Yeah.
Is that a reasonable place to start?
Yeah.
Okay. We have agreement. Thank you. Thank you so much, Nikki.
Of course.
And thank you all
Thank you.
for contributing to this. Important.
Thank you for operationalizing this.
Trying.
Yeah,
It helps. It helps to have everybody at the table. Hopefully the people who aren't at the table will be okay.
I know Todd and me and Bruce were part of the evaluation committee for so long. And really wants it as part of that too.
Okay, so staff will work to identify the next available executive session, and we'll connect with Ms. Ramos to see if she is available.
Do you have her contact?
I think you should.
All right. Well, then back to the script. That concludes the agenda for this evening's study session. Is there any other business to come before the council from my colleagues or staff? There being no further business, the study session is adjourned. Council will convene for executive session immediately following this meeting. Thank you all.